like anime? Of course you do. Why else would you be listening to this podcast? Well, given that you do, and that you're here, why don't you head over to Wave Motion Canon and read some fantastic articles by folks like Tamerlane, who wrote this awesome retrospective, why over 60 years of animation history, Western and Eastern, are so misunderstood. It's a fantastic piece. A lot of people are talking about it. Wave Motion Canon also brings you great anime podcasts like this. Wait a minute. Other great anime podcasts like Senpai, Coast to Coast. In the latest episode of that, my friend Josh Dunham provides a very personal and unique take on what Evangelion means to him at this point in his life. It's a hell of a thing. I think you should probably listen to it at least once. Again, very unique recording, very personal take on that stuff. And if you like that sort of stuff, and you like anime, so of course you would, just go to www.wavemotioncanon.com and check it out.
Warui Deshou, はじめ。
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 1 of Warui Deshou, an anime podcast that's probably bad. Well, that's what it says in the name, so be forewarned.
We don't lie.
We don't. And the first clue is that this is episode 1, yet it's not our first episode. So that might be...
Doesn't that mean that we have, increased productivity? That we're enthusiastic? That's not a bad sign.
That is very true.
We can undersell ourselves much better. Hi, this is a podcast with me in it. It's bad.
To be fair, the last episode was us discussing the anime that is our lives. So that also counts.
The anime that is X-Files.
Oh goodness.
Oh,
Well, I should introduce, for anyone who is listening for the first time to episode 1 here, I'm the Subtle Doctor. My esteemed co-hosts are, we've got the First Lady of Warui Deshou. She wants to believe it's Forgalia.
Oh no. Hi. I didn't even have anything to do with X-Files anymore. I dropped it the second season.
That is it. You're forever the X-Files person now.
Oh no.
It's gonna follow you everywhere. Like some shadowy figure in the show.
Oh. I didn't get to that part. That sounds interesting.
I've never seen an episode. I was too young when it originally aired to appreciate its charms.
I have watched maybe 3 in my entire life.
So the part I remember about it is whenever so they used to sell mini products on television, one of which was some kind of soundtrack compilation. I forget what the theme of it even was, but the X-Files theme by DJ, I can't remember his name, was on there, and I was like, wow, that sounds pretty rad. And that was as much as I interfaced with the X-Files in my younger years.
To be fair, that probably accounts for 90% of the people who've ever heard of the X-Files, except they just refer to the regular version of the theme rather than the remix that you're thinking of.
Right. And those sultry tones belong to the metaphor architect himself, Shadon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Or morning or afternoon, depending on your local time zone.
Before we get into the main course, I thought once again we would chat about what's been going on in our lives this week. Shadon, why don't
this
you...
week? It's been such a long time.
Well, you're right. You're right. It's been a while, but we don't want to be here all night.
Nothing happened. This week, nothing happened. If it's like the past month, I can talk for like 2 hours.
Okay, well let's go past month, Forgalia. Go for it. Launch into it. Just the notable high points.
I watched Rurouni Kenshin.
Yeah.
Almost.
Oh.
I mean, I dropped it on like episode 80 or something. Something.
Oh, you got past the good part. Way past the good part.
It's so weird because like I dropped Hokuto no Ken for X-Files, then I dropped X-Files for Kenshin.
What a bizarre path.
You're making some questionable life choices.
having my limited experience with the genre, I couldn't help but try making some parallels between the two shows.
What? Between X-Files and Kenshin?
No, between Hokuto no Ken and Kenshin.
That would have been a blog post I would have loved to have read.
Wow.
Oh yeah, like I would have talked about like how the flashes from the Christian guy near the end that blinded Kenshin are like UFOs. That would be so cool. Like, look, there's this pixel that's black in this frame. That's a UFO.
I really hate that story arc. And
I didn't like it. I dropped it. I like blind people in anime are so cool.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
And then like Kenshin gets blind. And I'm like, okay, it's gonna get cool. And then I got bored. I dropped it before it got cool. Does it get cool?
No, not in the TV show. So what happened there was, at the time it was airing, after the Return to Kyoto story arc, all the business with Shishio and the Jupongatana concluded. That's as far as the author had written the manga. So the studio kind of went forward from there and made their own story.
And did a poor job of it by the sound of it.
It's really, really bad.
Why it contradicts just about everything.
The German horse riding swordsmen are the absolute nadir of that.
Get there. Holy crap. I gotta pick up this show again.
No,
now.
It's not even.
I have to.
No, it's not. It's not worth it. It's real stupid, and not in a good way. Not in that Hokuto no Ken way.
Yeah. The only way that German swordsmen, riding on horses works in that kind of context is if it's a Monty Python sketch. I don't think this is it. So no.
No, if you'd like to see how it really ends, because it's very good, then you should pick up the comics directly after that point, or also the Trust and Betrayal OAVs, because the story from that point becomes a great deal of flashback to Kenshin's past when he was much younger and when he was an assassin who killed people and fought in the war, and then it kind of that stuff loops back around to present day, and so, there's a lot of revelations about the character
to
that
Kenshin
are
in 2016. The present day Kenshin in 2016.
No. Right. Yes.
Oh my god, no.
Yeah.
So to ask then, Doc, from what you've described it, you're basically telling me that the anime studio, after they ran out of material to adapt, they basically committed to creating their own terrible fan fiction and then making it into a show?
Kind of, yeah.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at how often that happens. When so very often studios pick up a manga or a light novel series kind of midway through its run, or even sometimes very early into its run. Akame ga Kill is a particularly weird example of this, where they'd only a couple of Tankobon volumes of the manga had come out when they decided to adapt it into an anime, and so there's an anime original ending. That happens for a lot of shows.
I think HBO are experiencing that firsthand right now.
Oh,
nice
man.
one, George R.R. Martin. Nice one.
Now, I heard didn't the producers of the show like talk with Martin to basically get to know what he wants to do with the story and then sort of go along that, except whatever.
Possibly. I just know that if you happen to be a fan of the book right now, then, well, keep twirling those thumbs, folks. It'll happen eventually. The book is basically becoming the Duke Nukem Forever of fiction.
Oh, man. I would not have guessed that so early in our life we'd have invoked the name of Duke Nukem Forever. But Warui Deshou has done it.
I lost a bet for £10 based because of Duke Nukem Forever.
We also have Mighty Number 9 and Tekken 6. I guess these are a bit more
Contemporary.
Yes.
Oh dear. My number 9. The 9 stands for the number of years it will be in development.
But like you called Hokuto no Ken stupid or something, whatever. Like
good stupid.
Lovably stupid.
Yes.
But watching Kenshin made me appreciate some of the things it did so much because, like, okay, in Kenshin's power level begins like really low, and like every fight needs to be climactic, which is kind of a theme in the genre. I'm starting to figure out like every single fight is climactic. Kenshin beats like Shishio, and then next arc, he fights some guy with some dogs. And the guy just throws him a chain from like 50 meters away, and Kenshin is like, with his godlike speed and everything, gets hit by the chain. So like, for some reason, every single fight, Kenshin doesn't use his full potential, even though nothing really changes between early fights and late fights. While in the meantime, Hokuto no Ken, like, Kenshiro doesn't care. Kenshiro early on just touches you in the head and like you die, and that's very consistent.
Yes,
like tension is created in Hokuto no Ken by other situations, which are like hostage situations usually, but then Hokuto no Ken like organically makes Ken evolve because like by staying exactly the same, because it's like, okay, he goes through like 3 hostage situations basically that he handles really badly but comes out in the end or whatever, and then he starts handling them properly. You're like, whoa, this would have taken 5 episodes like 5 months ago. Right now he's like walks up to the guy and intimidates him and punches him in the face or something. Like, okay, he's handling stuff correctly, he's learning. Kenshin, on the other hand, adjusts his power level to make everything climactic, and then like apparently he just gets better because he learns like one move, and it's like, cool, I got this final move.
The Amakakaru Ryu no Hirameki.
Yes.
You make it sound like that he's getting moves in the same way that Final Fantasy is going to be the final episode in the series.
No. He just gets one move, and his entire thing is like, if I put all of my strength into what I do, I'm gonna become like the Manslayer again. I'm gonna like start killing people for some reason. Yeah, he constrains himself to not like, he basically doesn't like, because he doesn't want to kill anymore, and he doesn't want to go back to his old self of like killing people, even though he was an idealist back then, and he didn't just mindlessly kill people, which is weird.
When the show starts out, right, like Kenshin, post-war Kenshin, is constrained by his sort of ideal that, I guess very similar to actually Vash from Trigun, that everyone can be saved, and that, you know, killing, taking the life of another is like a no-no, right? Life is sacrosanct, and his mission he wants to atone for all the people he killed by protecting people with his sword going forward. So Kenshiro in Hokuto no Ken has none of that. He's not really
he just kills
an idealist. Yes, he's like, he's surviving.
Evil. You're an asshole. I'm gonna touch you in the face and you're gonna die.
He's a 90s action movie star.
And you're right about so he was always, Kenshin, an idealist. It's just that when he was much younger, he was kind of used as a political tool he let himself be because he wanted to get involved and make a difference in
Yeah, but like
the war.
I don't see the connection to how, like I don't see how this connects to bloodlust basically. Like,
Well, so
if
that's the thing is you
he
should
killed
see
for a
those
purpose.
you should see those OAVs, and that might shed some light on it for you, or read the
Okay,
read the
fair enough.
comics going forward. There's a lot that happens that will kind of illuminate for you the connection.
Fair enough.
Don't rely on a hokey.
I don't have. He's like, I can't put my full power into anything. And then his master's like, okay, this is the coolest thing ever. You like draw your sword, and it's the coolest thing ever.
That's literally what he
It's
said. No,
it's
it's not.
so cool. You can use it with your full power, and you're not gonna go back to manslay yourself for whatever reason.
So it's not
Because
he
it's so
develops,
cool.
It's not because he develops a strong sense of morality. It's just because it's so cool.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like he can he doesn't like train himself to use more power without
Wow.
turning back to his old self. He just learns a cool thing.
So he's
Like draws his sword.
exactly.
And it's so cool.
So his style of swordsmanship is all I think Bato Jutsu is the name of it. It's all based around sword drawing techniques. Like the one sword draw should be kind of enough to conclude the fight is the idea, and that final technique is just meant to be the summation of that style, like the sort of perfect lethal sword draw. But it won't be lethal for him because his sword is a reverse blade and blah blah blah.
I don't get that. I'm the worst weeb, but like, okay. Early on, Kenshin meets a bunch of police officers, and they're like, "Wow, you can't carry a sword." And he's like, "It draws it," and it's like, "This is a reverse sword." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the other edge," and he's like, "You can't kill anyone with this." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the other edge is still pointy. Like, you can kill someone with that. Like, how does that work?"
He uses it for shaving. That's the best explanation I've got.
Yeah, the X thing is just the shave one, like a shave mark.
Oh, he's just shaving.
Yeah, he is a Gillette.
Oh man, that's sad. Because actually, well, never mind. I won't spoil it for you.
Oh, is it about the part that I haven't gotten to?
Yes, they do very much explain where those marks come from.
Oh, like the fan fiction explains it.
No. The real, like the real fiction, the Watanabe written comic book.
The real fiction.
Yes, the actual fiction, the canon.
Well, I think I can speak for us all that once this is done, I'm going to write a fan fiction where he gets those marks and cuts from just being bad at shaving.
Are you gonna take a break from writing your new book to write fan fiction?
It was going to happen eventually.
Something beautiful though about that show. You know, you always see like the power level arguments. What would happen if this guy fought this guy in fairgrounds and everything? But then like Kenshin fights Shishio and like Shishio, spoilers, loses because he's not the protagonist. but he
That's an awful reason for someone to lose, just because he doesn't have the plot armor.
Yeah, kind of, but like he loses because he succumbs to his wounds. Like he
doesn't get beaten really.
He was basically like burned. His entire body was burned. So his sweat glands don't work. So he can only fight for like 15 minutes before he starts
his
having
blood
issues.
Boils.
So
wait,
literally you're saying he only starts...
blood actually boils.
Are you telling me he only starts having issues 5 minutes in, as opposed to immediately given his entire body has been burned?
Well, that happened like 50 years ago. Whatever.
He miraculous. Talk about plot armor. He had he got shot a bunch of times and burned alive. Somehow he's still living.
He's a human cockroach.
Yeah. Yeah, it's allegedly like his will to live or whatever, whatever. But like, he dies because he was too hot, basically. And so like
too hot for this world.
I immediately my brain started thinking like, yeah, but what if that didn't happen? What if they kept fighting? Who was gonna win? And like, that's a natural thought. And the amazing writers thought of that, and they put the Gototsu guy say like it doesn't matter who would win or not. The situations, the circumstances that led everyone to this moment was part of the battle. Like, that's beautiful. Thank you. This changes my entire life. That's beautiful, and that's the perfect explanation for such a plot thingy.
Yeah, I found that Kenshin TV is the fights. I don't know. It's almost like dueling philosophies instead of kind of who's the stronger dude, right? Like
who can draw the sword in the coolest way.
So I guess the Shishio's way of being and his kind of worldview is what really, that's what lost. So you've been watching or playing anything else, Borg?
Oh boy. What a lovely question. I watched Star Wars: The Force Awakens. It was great.
Was it so good that you forgot about it?
No, I'm trying to decide whether I should talk about something that's anime, but I haven't. I've watched 2 episodes of, or bad movies.
Wait.
Go for it. It doesn't matter to me.
I watched Don't Open Till Christmas. On Christmas. That was the worst movie ever.
For those of you listening at home, you can't see me right now, but I'm currently burying my face in my hands.
It has the best opening scene of any movie ever. Which is I posted it on Twitter. You might have not seen it, but black screen, right?
Okay.
Fades to black. Fades to a small Santa figure with a photo behind him. It's nothing. Santa figure gets lit on fire spontaneously, and then starts melting. And inside the Santa figurine, that melts, is a knife. It's so cool. It's so stupid. It's the best thing ever.
That is the worst Christmas themed product to come out of Walmart's homeware section. It's a Santa figure and a knife.
Melt wax figure to get knife.
It's one way of saving on packaging.
It reminded me of my favorite thing about bad movies, which is when someone talks, these bad filmmakers just cut to a very zoomed in shot of someone's face and them just talking to the camera very badly. That's the worst thing ever, and I love it. And there was so much of it in this movie. Spoilers. The bad guy drops from 6 flights of stairs. He falls down 6 flights of stairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're he's dead. It's 20 meters.
I wasn't questioning the outcome, to be honest. I didn't think he was walking away from that one.
Protagonist runs down to check up on him. He opens his eyes, lunges at protagonist. We cut to the inspector. Mm-hmm. The inspector opens the inspector has a package that spoilers came from the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And that had writing on it that said "Don't open till Christmas," which is the title of the movie. He opens the package. The package explodes. Explodes. Half a second later, cut to credits. Nothing is explained. It's explained before, but the outcome of anything isn't shown. You see the bad guy kill the protagonist, or rather lunge at the protagonist, and then a bomb explodes near the inspector. Half a second later, cut to credits.
Wow.
This movie was amazing.
And by amazing, you mean incredibly mind-bogglingly awful.
This sounds wonderful.
Yes, everyone should watch it, next Christmas.
That sounds like an excellent idea.
Okay.
I guess I also watched Ping Pong the animation, 4 episodes or whatever.
Oh, you did.
Very, very good art direction. Very good, art direction and, in general, the direction of the scenes and, some of the artistic choices are so good.
That's Masaki Yuasa directing that, and he is one of my favorite directors. seek out anything he's done. It's all
I
great.
don't know anything else he's done.
He's done Kaiba, the Tatami Galaxy, Kemonozume, and a short called Cat Soup.
Cat Soup.
Yeah, it's like a maybe half-hour thing. It's like an OAV movie. It's very bizarre.
What exactly, like, is Ping Pong the animation like an original thing, or is it like a manga of sorts? Because
I'm not sure.
Because if the director here, like, came up with this art style, just because there's so much dissonance between it and the subject matter, which is ping pong, but it's like this almost like, I want to say hyper-realistic, but not really. It's exaggerated realism, I want to say, but like, this very crude art style that tends to realism, and like it almost seems like it takes everything seriously, with the subject matter being ping pong. It's genius. It's the best thing ever.
So it is a manga written by Taiyo Matsumoto, who I should have known that based on the cover for the manga, because he's written he wrote Tekken Kenkri Black and White, which is one of my all-time favorite manga. He's another one who I haven't read or seen anything bad from. So a lot of talented people have touched this fiction.
I feel like I've got a lot of work to do. A lot of things I need to watch and a lot of things I need to read.
Well, speaking of, what have you been reading and watching lately?
Well, the only thing that I've really been watching recently, apart from today's subject matter, which we'll be discussing later, I received a wonderful Christmas present from my dad, which was the Studio Ghibli collection.
Ooh.
All the way through, I think, until... Well, it's definitely as far as Ponyo, if not further than that. So I was watching, on Sunday, Kiki's Delivery Service. I did not, unfortunately, finish it all, because it got quite late by the time that I got distracted. But from what I have seen of it thus far, well, do I need to say any more than your reaction to it, Doc?
It is a gorgeous, gorgeous movie.
I have to say, right, you could.
It's
that
one of
film,
the few I haven't watched.
That film was made in 1989, and it could be absolutely rubbish as far as what's actually going on inside of it. Like, the characters could be spouting gibberish or nonsense, whatever. But on a technical level, making a film like that, using basically hand-drawn animation without computers, in that year, with such a level of detail and activity on them, blows my mind. Like, how they did it, I still don't understand. But they did it, and I'm very glad that they did, and the fact that the film seems worthwhile in of its own right is the cherry on the cake.
It's a stunner of a movie, and our family got it for Christmas as well.
Nice.
And I hadn't seen it in over a decade. I didn't own it, surprisingly, and so I watched it with my kids over Christmas, and man, we all absolutely loved it. Awesome. And yeah, the story, the content of the film, apart from the visual stuff and the directing, is it's a really nice story. It's something that kids and young people can very much relate to.
Oh, absolutely. Finding your own path in the world, establishing yourself. Everyone's got to leave the crib eventually, which might be relevant later on, funnily enough. But
oh damn!
Yeah, spoilers.
I was about to say that. Come
Watch
on.
out! Spoilers, thick and fast.
Spoilers, thick and fast. But yeah, no, it was very sweet from what I've seen thus far, and I'm going to finish it off probably after this is all wrapped up. So expect probably a lot of gushing on Twitter later.
Very good.
Beyond that, not really been watching much else. What I've been doing though, I've been
More Guilty Gear?
More Guilty Gear. I was at a tournament about a week and a half back in Leeds in the United Kingdom, and I took first place. Good times.
Wow, congrats. Like,
Is
how...
there any place we can watch footage?
It unfortunately was not streamed or otherwise recorded, that particular tournament. It was only a relatively small thing, a monthly.
Oh.
But...
So it's like entrance, Shudon. That's it.
Well, I do like to play with myself a lot. Sorry.
Oh.
Sorry.
Well, now you're getting a roommate, so you're gonna get help with that.
Thanks, Mark. Oh, good God. No, there were people there. They basically it's a Leeds focused monthly, and because Leeds is relatively close to Manchester, I got on the bus. The bus was absolutely awful on the way there because it had snowed, but the driver, in his own twisted logic, had decided that he would turn the heating up on the coach to what felt like 200 degrees. That's Celsius, not Fahrenheit, by the way, that I'm referring to. It was absolutely stifling. When I got there, I had a good time. I won £25 for my trouble. I briefly chatted up the barmaid, who said, "Did you win one of those tournaments up there?" I said, "Yeah, I did." So that was nice. So that was pretty good. What?
Nice.
She also gave you a Viking helmet?
Sadly not, no. I don't think she brought it with her that day. It was no Viking helmet Sundays, as I understand it. But anyway.
Those blue laws.
Yeah.
It's
that...
awfully exclusive.
Were you Kai Kisuke?
Yes, I was.
I said it before. I'm not wrong.
I will say this, though. I've recently also joined up with a team. Manchester Battle Arena, they're called. They're mostly Tekken Tag Tournament and Mortal Kombat players, but there's another guy who plays Guilty Gear. He offered an invite to me back at Revo 2015, and I had a think on it and decided, you know what? I will. So I then proceeded to win, and everyone was like being joyful and joking, like, "You're a bastard!" and all that. So I suggested later that I should call myself NBA Deep Wang.
Oh no, why?
Because I kept instant killing people. That's why. I said it myself, actually, because when I was playing another guy, like, he started to wail on me a bit, and everyone was cheering for him. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Got no problem with that whatsoever. But I think it was a phrase...
No, if people are cheering against you, you're doing everything right.
Exactly. This is the point I'm getting to. And I think it's a quote from Batman. What does it go again? Oh, yeah. You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I think I've definitely hit the latter by now.
That's Batman.
You should embrace the heel persona. It will take you far if you ride the sort of anger, that wave of it, and don't fight it.
Yeah, you even have the evil beard and everything.
That is true. I do have the evil beard. I've recently got it trimmed though, so people aren't comparing me to a terrorist anymore, which is nice.
I've only compared you to Rasputin. Come on.
Wasn't Rasputin a terrorist against the Russian state?
Well,
oh, what else have I been doing? I've done a little bit more work on a novel I'm currently writing. Not a lot, admittedly. It's kind of been a very on and off project, but I hammered out another 2,000 words for it the other day, and just trying to gradually work my way back into keeping up with that, rather than spending my time browsing YouTube as much as I often do.
It's been a while since I saw you post the thing you wrote on Twitter. Have you been keeping up with work?
It's mainly just that I just had no motivation for it for a while. Just kind of felt burned out.
Understandable. Do you have anything in print? I mean, currently?
I have a self-published ebook of a novel I had written previously. That's available on a link on my Twitter. It is called The Colour Politic. I wrote it actually nearly 7-8 years ago, as a matter of fact, while I was in university. Around the time, I'll tell you the inspiration because it's kind of one of those funny things, but at the time I'd been reading 1984, which I was very fond of, still am as a matter of fact. It's one of my favourite books. And I thought, I've wanted to write for a long time. Could I write a dystopian fiction novel? So, at around the time, I think it was 2008, it was President Obama's inaugural election. I was watching it on BBC News, and what they had was a map of the United States that gradually filled in by colour, red Republicans, blue Democrat, over time, as the votes were counted. And then I suddenly had an idea. What if I wrote a story where it was based around a fictional country where that was the electoral system, but the red states and the blue states were perpetually at war with each other.
Oh, that's cool.
So that's the idea I came up with. And then the story I actually wrote was centered around a character who, when he was younger, he had a girlfriend. She had a child on the way. And what happened was that she had transferred from a different state entirely for her university studies. And as a result of her parents falling sick, she travelled back up to go see them. But unfortunately, about that time, the electoral cycle happened. The state shifted, and he got cut off from her. And the story starts 15 years later, when he gets a chance to go try and find her again. And as he gradually unravels why this system is here, and all sorts of horrible and nasty things happen because I'm a mean bastard when it comes to writing.
You're just a mean bastard, period.
Yes,
How would you like rate your first writing experience?
Bloated. Bloated is the first word that comes to mind. I know the word count. To give you some context, your average novel released last time I checked was around 80,000 words. My novel, the very first one I wrote,
doesn't sound like a lot.
It actually can be depending on your plot, but my novel that I ended up writing was 154,000 words approximately.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yes.
But like besides length, besides just trimming a few things, would you change anything else?
That is the main thing I would change, because I get the feeling I could probably have told the same story much more efficiently and therefore better in maybe, say, 2/3 of the length, if not less than that. Bits of it feel very uneven. There's a lot of dialogue and certain metaphors that I use and certain things I would change. Some of it I'm very, some of it I'm quite proud of. Some particular bits of it, particularly the environment descriptions. But I think overall, it's, as I say, the main problem is it's bloated. It can be intimidating to read that much stuff. People say that it's good, which is cool and all, but if you've got to be, if you want to improve your own work, you've got to be your own harshest critic, and that's me in a nutshell.
So true.
So,
and as someone who struggles to write 2,000 words, damn, 150k. That's a lot of words.
It was 9 months it took me to complete it.
But I'll have to check it out. Like, it sounds interesting.
So how far done are you with your current novel that you're writing?
48,000 words currently written, and I would say it is probably 2/3, I would guess. So it's a much more reasonable length. This one.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's another science fiction story.
I'll explain the premise of this one. This was much more recently when I started this, but I had read at the time Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Everyone, of course, knows the film, or at least has heard of it. I'll give you my brief thoughts on the book. It's very good, and then the ending happens and you wish you had never read it, because the ending completely ruins the entire point of the book. But I'll not digress into that. But what I really liked about that book was it was essentially set around a small town environment in the US, very localized. A lot of people knew each other very personally, and I thought that'd be an interesting place to set a story. Now, the title of this novel is called The Probability Mechanic. Now, in a moment of literally just random light bulb inspiration, I had a thought. What if you made that literal? What if you could literally change people's look? So the idea is, it's set in 1960s Nevada, and of course, if you know anything about Nevada, you know what that state is famous for, and how that ties into the concepts of look.
They're very puritanical.
Really?
No, it's totally joking.
I was going to say, I know God definitely does not play dice as far as Albert Einstein is concerned, which, funnily enough, is actually the quote I inserted at the start of the book. But anyway, the idea was, it's 1960s Nevada, and the main character is a reporter for a small town newspaper. And he gets told one day by his boss, who I in some way kind of homaged J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man because he's a bit of a prick, but anyway. He basically says, I've had a request for an advert in from this lady who says that she can make people look it. And everyone's very incredulous about this, like, what, really? No, this is all a con.
Oh, luck, not look. Oh.
No, look, as in roll of the dice. But,
yes.
So he goes, the story is told from his perspective, and he potentially goes to try and find out if she's legitimate or not. And it's over time, he gets to know her better, understands what her procedure actually does. Then things start going wrong. But the thing that I'm trying to write this novel to do, in particular, is to try and make the reader question if what's actually going wrong is the result of what she's doing or not.
Sure.
Whether or not I succeed at that is going to be a different matter. But thus far, I've just had the first major horrible thing happen in the book, and then a lot of horrible things are going to happen from here on out, because, once again, I'm an awful person when it comes to my writing.
It sounds infinitely better than what it made me think of, which is to say, my least favorite story arc of the Vision of Escaflowne anime from the mid-90s. Anybody seen that?
I've heard of it, but never seen it.
It's very good. It's one of my favorites, actually. But, even in your favorite stuff, there are parts you like more and less. And the part that I least like of Escaflowne involves these two cat lady sort of super soldiers who have been injected with luck blood.
I will completely replace your body's blood with the fortune blood.
Fortune blood?
Emperor Dornkirk's research selected people with strong luck and a high survivability factor from all over Zybach. And from the nuclei of their cells, he extracted fortune DNA, which he then fused together using the fate alteration engine to create this artificial blood.
Huh?
But the risk is great. Any mistake and...
We'll be just fine. I know we will. She's right, Lord Falcon. We're very lucky.
Intensify luck.
Can I just stop you there, Varg? That is almost beat for beat the plot point of a Red Dwarf episode.
Oh no!
I am not even kidding you. They basically find a luck virus. It's the episode Quarantine, and it's one of the best of the show's run. So, once again, we're finding an anime meant to be taken seriously, or something meant to be taken seriously, is somehow preempted and parodied by a British sitcom. What a world we live in.
Oh,
but
man.
yes, you were saying.
No, that's it. I mean, that's all you need to know. Luck blood.
That's it.
Blood from lucky people.
There is no blood transfusion. There is no, full-leaf clover blood or anything stupid like that in my book. Thank God for that. There'll be plenty of other stupid stuff, I'm sure, but not that specifically.
Also, Gurren Lagann has probability-altering warheads, which is pretty rad.
Probability-altering warheads?
Yes.
What did they just have 1,000 mirrors stashed inside of them, and then they break on impacts?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Is that more spoilers?
No.
Okay, I must the reference. I'm not sure I get.
Oh no,
Breaking a mirror is bad luck.
Oh
shit!
There's the penny. See you.
There we go. Sorry, Doc's a little slow on the update.
It's quite okay.
Gurren Lagann is one of those things happen that you don't really take a lot of time to think about. It's not. I mean, at that point, shortly before the probability-altering warheads are used, two robots are fighting that are of such a scale that one of them hurls a galaxy at another robot.
Oh.
Right.
So,
I see.
And
yes.
now I'm thinking of Men in Black, because that's what happens at the end of Men in Black. They play with marbles at galaxies again.
Don't think about Men in Black.
No. Just stop.
Wait, why not? Like, the first movie was cool.
Yep.
Wasn't it?
Yes,
It's
it
been
was.
too long since I've seen it. I don't remember.
Yeah, Doc's been
The first
neuralized.
movie was cool, the second one was dumb, and the third one was even cooler.
Wait a minute. There's a third
Ben
Black
yes.
movie?
Relatively recent one.
Is it like a direct-to-television?
No.
No.
Theatrical release?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We got, like, with real actors and everything.
Where was I?
Go watch it, like, right now.
Okay.
Taking a break.
break for Men in Black.
We'll be back in an hour and 30 minutes, folks.
Well, I can't wait to see how hair loss affects your writing, though.
I'm not sure that hair loss has a correlation between writing quality, to be honest. But maybe it might help. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a study with how Hair Shadon writes with how post Hair Shadon writes.
I'd also like to bear in mind that I wrote that first book like maybe 8 years ago, so a number of things have happened since then. Like, I've watched and read a lot more, so I think you might find...
That is the joke. I'm sorry.
Oh. Sorry, I killed the joke. Someone call the police.
Well, it deserved to be killed.
True that.
So,
I guess I should briefly discuss what I've been up to before we start to talk Kyousougiga.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been, let's see, I beat Shovel Knight recently. Nice. What a fucking great game.
I have yet to play it myself, but I intend to soon.
I haven't played it either.
I mean, they just nailed exactly what they were going for, which was early Mega Man meets DuckTales, meets, I don't know, some Super Mario stuff.
Metroid?
And no Metroid, no backtracking and none of no Symphony of the Night mechanics with the no Metroidvania stuff. Just pure kind of Nintendo hard platforming. Except what they've done some really nice things. They kind of took the edge off that Nintendo hard in a way, where the some of the jumps are and some of the feats that you have to perform are difficult, but the penalty for failure is not so harsh that you're put off and you just don't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
You kind of have infinite lives. Where when you lose, they just take money away from you. But you need money to buy health upgrades and weapon upgrades and whatnot. So there's incentive to not die. But there's also, again, you don't want to rage quit just because you died.
Yeah. In a lot of Nintendo platformers, often dying would rob you of whatever power-up you might have picked up. Ninja Gaiden was definitely one of them that did this, and well, good luck completing the rest of the level without having a hard time. So not only was death punishing in of itself, because you make one minor mistake, you just die, but then it feeds back into that, kind of like a feedback loop. Not only have you failed, but you've made it harder, which is just great.
God, those games were hard. The music in Shovel Knight too. I mean, I know that sort of retro chiptune has been in vogue for a number of years, but man, I love that kind of music in this game. And I recently found out as well. I had no idea when I bought the game that they had made a sequel that is completely free and unlocks whenever you beat the original game. So now I've got the Plague Knight campaign to go through, which would make my kids happy. They're watching me play this game. Aww. They like the 2D sprite characters. Like it's fun. A game that they are not watching me play deliberately is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
Yeah. I can't blame you for that one.
Is it too boring for them?
No.
It's visually stimulating. I think they would enjoy looking at it, but the story is a bit mature. It's kind of grim. There's a lot of death and sickness.
I see. To explain, Vogue, this is not a spoiler because it's the very opening of the game. But as I recall, isn't the opening basically you controlling the two brothers wheeling out their dying or dead father on a cart?
So he's sick. He's sick. He's gotten very, very sick. The very opening scene is actually the youngest brother at their mother's grave, kind of reliving the mother's death she drowned, and he's kind of thinking about that. Yeah. And he's kind of snapped back to reality when his older brother calls him over to help wheel their dad to the priest because he is very sick.
Yep. Not exactly Saturday morning cartoon, shall we say.
Fun time.
And so their journey, their roughly 3-hour journey, is sort of for some medicine that can heal their father. And it is a gorgeous, gorgeous game. Beautifully rendered, even on the PlayStation 3, which I'm playing it on. There's a PC and a PS4 version, but it looks fantastic on PS3. Runs great. It's just a nice, slick adventure game with some really fun puzzle mechanics. The control scheme is interesting. Have any of you played Ni no Kuni?
I actually haven't. I have never played it because I'm terrible.
So there's a mini game in that controls like brothers, in which each brother, their movement is assigned to either the left or the right stick. So you're using one stick to move older brother, one stick to move younger brother, and each one has an action button. And so a lot of the puzzles involve you. It's sort of like rubbing your belly, scratching your head, the game, right? Where you're kind of doing these two different things at once. Where you're moving one stick in a circular motion while kind of moving the other up and down and pressing the action button, and you can't forget you're holding this other button down for one brother while you do an action with another. And yeah, they're pretty clever, and there's no dialogue in that game. It's a made-up language that the characters all talk, and you're meant to just kind of intuit based on body language and visual cues what they're saying. But it's very, I don't know, that makes it all the more powerful to me. And it's very, like, you kind of start out in these pastoral landscapes, and the range of environments you go through and creatures you see. There's a very particular kind of European fairy tale aesthetic that they're going for. It looks super, and it's really, really fun. I have to be near the end because I know it's about 3 hours, and I've played it a couple of hours.
One thing I would ask then, Doc, is one interpretation I heard about the control scheme was that they were doing the two analog stick two brothers thing, because that is harder objectively than controlling a single character with an entire controller, because you're managing two workloads mentally at once. You're controlling two. It's like playing two chess games simultaneously. And one interpretation I heard was that was done deliberately in order to enhance the idea of the story, because they're undergoing a hardship. See, for example, drawing the card. Would you agree that enhances it? Would you say that helps improve the story?
It does in a very. I haven't gotten to this part, but I've had the game spoiled for me. I will not spoil it for anyone else, but there's a moment right at the end of that game in which the very unusual and at times I don't know, I don't want to bag on the control scheme too much because I actually like it. I don't mind it. It's a fun mental challenge. It's never put me off the game, but some people are put off by it. But to them, I would say there's this moment at the end of the game that makes any adjustment period that you go through worth it, because they use that control scheme to communicate certain things about the story in a way that will be impossible otherwise. And it's one of those really just cool things that video games as an art form alone can do, because they're interactive in this very direct and tactile way that movies and such aren't.
Yeah, you're experiencing spontaneous feedback directed by your own actions rather than simply being a passive observer.
Yes, exactly. So I'm playing through that game, playing through Tales of Zestiria, but not a lot to say about that because it would just be, here's some story points. You know, the gameplay is Tales gameplay, and it's good. But I quite like the cast of characters and the story itself and the world. Like, all that stuff is actually the best I've seen a Tales game do that stuff. So if that's why you play those games, like, this one is worth checking out, even if you're kind of bored with Tales games or you never played one before. Like, this is a perfectly fine first Tales game. It's not difficult so far. I'm about 12 hours into it. But yeah, I love the world. And also, you've never been able to play a Tales game in Japanese before. So you can finally do that, and that certainly enhances the experience and the story. You don't have to put up with the dub, which, I mean, that might be a little harsh because, I mean, the dub for some of those games is fine, but that's about as good as it is. It's fine.
It is better that you have the option than not all, absolutely.
Yes, I agree. And anime-wise, haven't really completed anything bar Kyousougiga, but I've been I've been watching a lot of currently airing stuff of the new season, and it was meant to be a dry season. People were not expecting a whole lot. I think spring and summer, there are some titles on the horizon that people are really excited about. There's the new Macross, the new JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Yep, Diamonds Unbreakable.
Trigger has a new original animation coming out. They're the people that did Kill la Kill, the former Gainax people. So there's a lot of stuff that people are looking forward to, but as usual with anime, they make enough of it that there are some gems there if you kind of seek them out. And there's some good stuff airing this season. The best of the bunch would probably be a show called Erased.
I was thinking you were going to say that because I remember seeing that on your Twitter, and I've heard other people commenting very positively about it.
Yeah, I think in the hashtag you might see is Bokumachi, and that is it's a mystery, but it's also a time travel story.
Right, I'm instantly sold. That'll do for me. Time travel mystery done.
The premise is very just weird. So the main character at the beginning of the show, he's like he's like our age, like early 30s, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone by making you too old, but I'm in my early 30s. So this guy is a pizza delivery man in his early 30s, and he has been kind of touched by this strange phenomenon.
Don't ever say that out of context, for God's sake.
Sorry. So, okay. All right, let me walk that one back.
He can never show us where.
No, I don't think he can. Anyway, Doc, you were saying.
Oh, sorry. So this guy will feel a particularly strong sense of deja vu, and realize he's reliving a moment that he just lived. Like, say he'll be driving down a street, and then he'll kind of blink and be like, wait a minute, I've driven down the street. I feel like I've just driven down the street. And that's because he did. And when we start the anime, he's kind of figured a lot of this stuff out. It's not that he's just getting this power. He's had it for a while. And he knows that, like, or he believes that it's because something is about to go horribly wrong, and for whatever reason, he's been tasked with the ability to relive that moment and fix it. Like,
this sounds a bit familiar.
Yeah, right. Like, I don't know, for example, one of the initial moments is he's meant to see that there's a truck driver asleep at the wheel and wake him up before he, because in the sort of Series A timeline, he runs over a child. But in the Series B, where the protagonist steps in, he solves that problem. But this whole thing, you might be thinking, okay, so I get this show. He's just going to hop back and fix some things. Well, really early, I think only 3 episodes have aired. But he, at one point, at the end of the first episode, shows up at his apartment. Something really, really horrible has happened. The cops are there. He runs away. And all of a sudden, he blinks, and he's in the 3rd grade again.
Wow.
So this power has sent him back that far to correct.
You mentioned he was 30 after all, so that's quite a number of years.
Mm-hmm. In the he's late 80s, I think. There's a big banner on his school, like 1988, like youth hockey champs or something.
I see.
And then, so going forward, it's about, like, the 8-year-old figuring out what he's supposed to change and going about doing that as an 8-year-old.
And impressing his teachers with, like, his intimate knowledge of subjects he's not supposed to know yet.
Well, since he was a pizza delivery guy, I guess, like, he wasn't super smart.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be fine in home economics class, but otherwise I think he's done for.
They do point out that he seems much more mature now.
Nice.
Because he's taken interest in looking after some of his classmates, and he has more initiative and that sort of thing. So,
He's more
there's
sexually active and all that.
No.
You had to go there, of course.
Oh my god.
No, it's fine. You suspend your disbelief at certain moments.
I'm certainly suspending mine right now.
But that one has proved to be really good. The other standout is I don't know the full title, but if you search for Rakugo anime, it's simply known as #Rakugo, because Rakugo is an ancient Japanese form of storytelling. It's kind of a one-man theater show, where a guy kind of sits down and he's got a story he's memorized, and he tells it from memory and does voices, may do a few of his own sound effects, and people play kind of traditional Japanese music. And it's set in, I think, the 80s. It hops, or there's a few, hops around time periods. So when the characters are younger, it's the 60s, but when the show starts out, it's, I believe, in the 80s. Correct me on that if I'm wrong, Twitter and emailers. But it's a really specific setting and very specific kind of thing it's about. But it's not the sort of thing where you have to be into that to appreciate it. The character stories it's telling are pretty universal. I think it's there's a lot of struggle of becoming an artist, and like a young person finding their path in the world. People that have been abandoned by their parents, struggling to forge their identities.
That sounds familiar.
That's that sort of stuff. And it's also like, if you're interested in storytelling, it's a very cool thing to see. Because
the thing you meant, the method you mentioned there, how what was it called again?
Rakugo.
Mm-hmm. That alone sounds absolutely fascinating as far as a method of conveyance goes. I mean, I in the past have done stand-up prose, essentially. So I've written a couple of scripts, like 1,500 words approximately a piece, and read them out on a microphone for people. But this takes it to a whole new level. I mean, memorizing.
I've read fan fictions.
Oh my!
On the internet, I know this stuff.
But this takes it to a whole new level, and it sounds fascinating. Like a full story in one's own head, providing different voices, then with the musical background to it as well, and on top of that, your own sound effects. That's interesting. I think I'll definitely have to check that out.
It is, and it's very much like an anime for old people, right? I mean, this is not the one. There's not a lot of the fan service with the cute girls. There's not robots, no lasers, no fights. It's like a PBS sort of anime, right? Where they explore, old Japan and old Japanese customs. But again, the character stories are great, and if this art does interest you, like the art of Rakugo, the first episode is actually a double length, so it's about 45 minutes, and they will have you'll see the entire routine of a character telling a story. Like they'll animate and have him telling the whole story, so you get essentially an animated Rakugo performance. Whereas other moments in the show, they're kind of cutting around, showing you certain bits. But in the first episode in particular, there are a couple different segments where you see the whole stories, and there's one where the apprentice is he's just failing, that he's losing the audience, and you have to sit there and watch the entire thing, him failing for 10 straight minutes. It's kind of uncomfortable.
That is, but very I liked gutsy. It. That's gutsy for the anime to do that, just because that he's losing the audience in the story, but then he's losing the audience as in us.
Well, he didn't. I mean, I can see where you could, but for me, it was fascinating to watch that process.
That's what I mean. It ultimately seems a bit of a gamble, but I think that it's something they should be applauded for trying, at least, to see, here's this performance failing, but understand the character doing it and seeing how it ultimately pans out.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it as risky because of the target audience, as the subtle doctor explained it, but yeah,
Yeah.
It does sound like something you don't really see all that often. Anything unpleasant, most shows just cut.
That is
let's
true.
Let's get to the fun stuff.
And the only other title that I'll mention, I think for you guys and our listeners that might be worth looking into is a show called Dimension W. And I say that because Vorgelia in particular, in the last episode, pointed out that she liked Darker Than Black very much.
Just to ask, is Dimension W the next door neighbor to Dimension X from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I'll have to investigate just to find that out.
The story convention there, like the premise is that Dimension W, like people have found out how to access this new dimension to mine energy from it. And so humanity now has limitless energy. And that's kind of the universe that it takes place in. And the main character is a guy who says, fuck that, give me my gas-powered cars. He's that sort of dude. Doesn't use like the new guns and stuff because they're powered by those energy cores. He just uses knives. He's kind of a bounty hunter type, as you would have in a show that is like Darker Than Black or a Cowboy Bebop, which I think it's very much going for that. And it kind of nails it. I mean, I think if you like those shows, you'll like this show. It's got a fuck ton of style. It's really stylish. The color palette, the designs are really cool. Great characters so far. Really nice action scenes. Fun soundtrack. Yeah, I mean, to kind of explain why the show is this way, American anime distributor Funimation is actually on the production committee of the show in Japan.
Oh, right.
So they have, people in those meeting rooms, giving input and whatnot that are, I don't know to what degree they're involved in the creative process, but I imagine, at least some degree, because the show is, it just seems like it was made for the people that they're targeting. The
more Western audience then.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that alone, just to see the creative process behind that and where there is where things cross over, would be fascinating to watch alone. And then you have the actual products of that, which by all sounds of it certainly seems like something that, again, I'm going to have to pick up. My list is getting longer at this rate.
Sorry to add so much to it.
I will say this though, from what you mentioned there about the fact that he uses knives and prefers like gasoline over unlimited energy. I think he's watched a lot of Star Trek, because one of the trends that I immediately thought of them was how guns in Star Trek are rubbish. Stick to proper bullets. Don't bother using lasers if you can help it.
Warui Deshou, we stick to bullets.
Wait, what? Like one phaser thingy kills people.
Right. Can I just point out, Vogue, that in not one but many episodes of Star Trek, there have been instances where, let's say you have Chakotay from Voyager and random red shirt number 2. So
I've only watched 2 seasons of TNG.
This ties back to what you were saying before, funnily enough, about him not dying because he's the protagonist. Okay, so you have a main character and some guy who does not even get a name or a line in the episode. The guy with no name will get shot in the shoulder by a phaser blast, and he will live. He will die, rather. I need to say. Whereas the main character will get shot by the same phaser blast in the chest, square on, and will live with only a mild concussion.
Maybe it was the stun setting. Maybe just pressed the button accidentally.
No.
Are you sure?
I'm fairly certain, because you're giving the writers of Star Trek's worst episodes far too much credit.
Set your phasers on. Stunning.
Set your phasers on. So, well, I think our subject matter for today certainly did that.
Set your phasers to dashing.
So you talked about the creative process. Funimation on their website actually has, when they post the episodes each week, they also post a kind of behind the scenes.
Oh, brilliant!
Look, I think I remember they have a voice acting one up. I don't recall what the other is about, and I haven't seen the one from this past Sunday. So it's a Sunday show. I haven't seen the newest one. They do have a character I think might be my favorite character of this year in anime so far. I know we haven't. That's not really that bold of a statement. It's only January.
Someone's got to win. Someone's got to take first place.
Man, I think by the end of the year he will still stick out in my head. He's a guy called Loser, and he wears a luchador-like mask and cape.
I'm wondering why he has the name he has.
Well, I will tell you. So, he's kind of his own reality television show in that what he does is he breaks into museums and other places that have valuable art and artifacts, and he will make a television production out of his attempt to steal said item. But he always fails. But he never gets caught. He just somehow or other fucks up and gets away. And so he's called Loser because he never succeeds. And he has a big fan following. But if people know where he's going to perform his next heist, or attempt his next heist, they will show up wearing his mask and have signs. And I just find that whole thing kind of hilarious. But he proves to be no joke if you watch the episode.
So he doesn't successfully steal the items and then lose them on the way back?
No, that's not in the information we've been given. That doesn't happen. Well, now that we've all caught up again, and then we're over an hour into recording, before we move on to Kyousougiga, let's take a break. Did you guys like the music in the last episode?
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
I was all of the interstitials, all of the music, I'm absolutely cool with. Keep them coming. They're good.
I'm glad you guys liked it. It's all stuff by a guy named Michael Kelly, who has, with his permission, we're using his music for our shows. He's a cool guy, and his music, I think, is really cool and fitting for our show. It's all kind of inspired by like 80s and 90s cyberpunk anime, stuff like Pat Labor, stuff like Bubblegum Crisis, stuff like Dirty Pair and Ghost in the Shell, all stuff that's good, stuff that we like here at Warui Deshou. And if you want to check out Michael's music, Every Day is Night in particular, that's our opening theme track. That one I particularly like, but if you want to check out any of his stuff, you can find it at soundcloud.com/Garoad Music. You can search Garoad, Garoad, on Bandcamp to buy it. And if you buy the new album he put out, the Valhalla soundtrack, Second Round, most of the proceeds from that are going to go to NCADV. It's an association that's against domestic violence. So money can go to a good cause.
Nice.
And you can get some good music. And so I should mention that he works for Sukeban Games, and that Valhalla is a game making.
The bartender.
Yes.
I still have yet to. Is that actually out?
Just the demo. The prologue is out. You can buy that, but there's also a free demo.
Once that thing is a full thing. Once that is a full thing, I'm getting it and I'm going to stream it blind. Like, I'm going to do a blind run of it on stream. So
you can also tune into Shadon's stream to hear Michael's music. You can also look him up on Twitter. He's at Garoad Music.
Garoad. How do you spell Garoad again, sorry?
Garoad. We really enjoyed it. So I hope you also enjoyed it.
Warui Deshou.
For our review and discussion here of Kyousougiga, we wanted to break it out into two parts, and this is kind of how I think we'll do most of our review discussions, so that if people haven't seen a show and don't want to be spoiled on it, they can still at least hear part of our podcast. So if we were a hipster indie band and decided to release our output on a cassette tape, which is what many of those bands do, You can think of the first part of our review as Side A, the non-spoiler side, in which we'll kind of discuss the show, things about the show in generalities, and you can hopefully, if you haven't seen the show and you're on the fence about it, that will push you one way or the other.
I will also add at this point that we will be releasing this podcast on vinyl.
No.
Oh.
That's not
Where's our budget? We don't have the budget.
Go fund me.
Where's the website money? We have like a website thing.
We drink, do. Can't I?
We're sponsored.
Drink. We are, but the money, it's coming, okay? The check's in the mail.
Oh, okay.
It's going to bounce like a tennis ball when it arrives, but it's coming.
And then Side B, Part B of our Kyousougiga review, will be spoiler heavy. We'll be talking about very particular plot points, characters, themes. The spoilers will be thick and fast, so fair warning, right? Only go there if you have either seen the show or you don't care about spoilers. So, with that in mind, we'll proceed here. And before we start talking about the show itself, I thought it would be useful to provide some kind of historical context for the show and kind of where it sits in anime history. So it's a 2013 show. It aired from September, I believe, to October to December of that year. And it was made by a little tiny itty bitty studio called Toei. they're not
never heard of them before.
No, they only pump out Dragon Ball and One Piece.
The new one?
Yes,
the new
all
one
Dragon
like
Ball. Yeah. Let's not open that can of worms. Put it back on the shelf immediately.
No ceiling.
So save it for later.
When it came out, I think it was pretty overlooked. I certainly didn't watch it when it aired. Some other stuff that was airing in the fall 2013, you got stuff like Golden Time, which I think a lot of people that had seen Toradora and were like, "Oh, it's the next thing by the lady who wrote Toradora." They were watching that. You had your Kyoto animation people that were watching Beyond the Boundary. They were excited about that. But probably the biggest thing I think that everyone was watching was Kill la Kill. That I think the hype and discussion of that show kind of overshadowed everything else that came out, except for possibly the hardcores that were watching Monogatari second season. But you had all that going on. And then this little show called Kyousougiga came out. And it originally, so before this anime TV show aired, a couple years prior in 2011, you had this short that aired on Nico Doga. And it aired on YouTube also. It was a lot of the content in that short, I think, actually made it into episode 0 of the show. Mm-hmm. And as part of why episode 0, if you watch it first, doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just a lot of crazy stuff happening.
Yep.
And so that was that short. It was created by the team at Toei. So if you look it up, right, and you see who made this, right, and who wrote Kyousougiga, the short and the TV show, you see the name Izumi Todo. And that is a pseudonym for the writing staff sort of in toto at Toei. Anyone who's into Gundam or robot shows from Sunrise is familiar with this sort of technique, to be kind to this process. A lot of their stuff is written by Hajime Yatate, which is just Sunrise's way of not giving their writers any credit.
Thank you, Sunrise.
Yeah, so Toei apparently does this shit too. So Izumi Todo, again, pseudonym for the writing staff, the entire writing staff. So we don't really know who to credit with writing the bulk of the show. But we do know, fortunately, who to credit with the direction. And I think the director is actually one of the big reasons to like feel really excited about this show, and you can feel good about being into it, and you can feel good about it because so the director is a lady called Rie Matsumoto, and this was her directorial debut. And she
really
yes, and she is a year younger than me. So to take a step back, Japan.
She's like 60.
Fuck you, Morgan.
Wow.
So she's like 31. And so back then, she's in her 20s directing this. The anime industry in Japan is notorious for not bringing through young talent. For the old guys get on top, and they kind of stay on top by and large. Yeah,
there's a phrase for that in the UK for any sort of job where that happens. It's called dying in your shoes. But basically, you die in the work shoes that you walks in with because you never leave that particular role. You stay embedded in it, entrenched in it for that long.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't want to say that it's all old people holding young people down. I mean, I think that's the case for some people. Like we talked about Kiki's delivery service. I think Hayao Miyazaki is such a kind of control freak that he couldn't get out of the way to let younger animators and directors blossom and have creative freedom at Studio Ghibli. And so now that he's retired, that studio is shuttered. But there are other reasons, like the pay is so bad that a lot of people leave the anime industry and go do video games or some other profitable activity. So not a lot of young creatives coming up through the ranks. But Rie Matsumoto, her directorial debut, Kyousougiga, she went on to do last year's popular show called Blood Blockade Battlefront. I've not seen it. I've heard mostly really good things about it. So she's still, it's not like she did Kyousougiga and then we never heard from her again.
That's good. That's good to hear.
She's still working, still doing stuff. I'm not sure of her future projects. Before she did Kyousougiga, Toei had her working on a lot of Precure stuff. Do you guys know about Precure and what that is?
No.
Okay, so it's kind of the big magical girl. It's a big magical girl kind of behemoth franchise. Like they'll do a new one every year. Like there's always Precure on TV.
So it's essentially the girls' equivalent of Super Sentai?
Yeah, pretty much. And except you have magical girl people here are not girls but like dudes in their 20s and 30s. I don't want to make that sound too dark, but it's a little dark. But so she's working on that stuff before she stepped in, and man, I mean, to go from directing and storyboarding episodes of Precure to directing Kyousougiga and Blockade Battlefront, I mean that's huge. And so I'm just really happy that she got her opportunity and seems to be taking advantage of it.
I'll get into more detail then, but now that you brought that up, that actually makes it all the more astounding, given that Kyousougiga doesn't, I apologise if I mispronounced that, but it doesn't exactly follow a standard format for an anime show. There's no, for example, 26 episode standard that you normally see with television broadcasts with this particular show.
That's right.
Which I'll again get into in more detail in a bit, but the fact that it arrived in such a non-standard way and was her directorial debut and, to spoil my opinion slightly, was done so well, that's all the more incredible. So kudos to her definitely for pulling it off. Yeah,
I mean, and she got really into the project, right? It's not like you have certain directors, like they'll get
George
their name
Lucas.
George Lucas. Akiyuki Shinbo is one in the anime industry where his name will be put on things because he's a name, but his sort of involvement in the nitty-gritty isn't a ton. But if you look at the Anime News Network encyclopedia entry for this, you'll see that that Rie Matsumoto scripted the final 3 episodes. She storyboarded 7 episodes of the show herself. She directed the first 2 episodes and the last episode. So there's, the director, and then there's the episode director, right? So she was the episode director for the beginning and the end. Mm-hmm. So, she was in the trenches with, with the people at Toei making this happen. And again, can't say enough good things about that aspect of this show. Happy that it launched her career.
Yeah.
But then we should probably now get into what the show itself is about.
I know, I want to ask the question, did people hate the show when it came out or something? Do people generally hate the show? Because
no, I think they just don't know about it.
2 hours ago, I received a question on Twitter. It's well, the podcast make me cry because people will talk trash on Kyousougiga.
Aw.
Is that a thing? Do people not like this?
Maybe.
I'm in a good mood today, so I'm not planning on making anyone cry. So to the mystery correspondent who tweets of Argelia, at least I can promise that I will not make you, weep tears over what I will say over the show.
Yeah, to spoil everything, I think we all liked it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, anyone who looks at my anime list will know how I feel about it. But I think, some people were turned off by certain aspects of it. But I think it's
Perhaps.
Largely either people pass it up or they don't know about it. I've not heard a lot of people who've actually sat down and watched the whole thing talk bad about it. I haven't heard anybody do that, frankly.
No,
Maybe I'm just hanging out with the wrong people.
Neither have I. Well, I'll try and explain the actual premise of the story. But the funny thing is, given what you told me about how this seems to be relatively obscure, this is going to be an interesting exercise because I'm doing this completely unscripted. And I think that maybe that might tie into why people don't know about it, because, of course, one of the strongest forces for getting people to try something is, of course, word of mouth. So, depending on how well I succeed now in explaining the premise of Kyousougiga, will probably also then tie into whether or not it just was obscure because it was just difficult for people to describe, perhaps. If you follow my meaning.
Honestly, I think describing roughly what happens in episode 1
Yeah.
is the perfect plot explanation, to get people into it.
I'll give it a shot anyway. So, Kyousougiga is essentially the story of 3 people who, without going into too much detail, are currently the rulers of a place called Kyoto, and it's actually not Kyoto as we know it, but rather a Kyoto in a different universe on a different world called the Mirror Capsule.
It's written in a different way than the other one. For me, the subtitles were the Looking Glass City.
Ah, I see.
That's what I also got.
I did not have that. Interesting. But anyway, so they are essentially the rulers of this city, and then a new presence arrives in the city, a girl named Koho, who she essentially introduces anarchy to the place, at least if you take the very first episode 0, as any indication. And the story from that point on, without going into too much detail, is essentially how what was a previously ordered and relatively humdrum city is upturned by her arrival and how she affects the world around her. In particular, how it will eventually relate to the 3 adults that I mentioned previously.
The thing that needs to be stressed, though, is that her arrival is not just normal. Nobody's supposed to be able to enter this place. It's a big plot,
That is an excellent point. People don't just walk in and out of this particular universe or the Mirror Capsule willy-nilly. Her getting in there is supposedly meant to be impossible, and yet she manages it. And so her arrival, not only her presence, but the consequences of that are what follows throughout and are the driving force of the plot, essentially.
You do learn what the place is in episode 1, and I think the story of what the place is really beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with that, for reasons that I'll get into a bit more definitely when we talk about spoilers. But suffice to say, you might think on face value that it is simply going to be a very short anime about, the wacky misadventures of Koso and what happens to her on a day-to-day basis. That is not true. There is certainly that part.
Episode 0 was like, okay, this is some place in Japan, and there's a bunch of benevolent deities, and there's like a high level of magic, and people are used to stuff like people running on roofs and all that.
Well, when you say people, you mean like floating weird shapes.
Yeah.
Some of the people are just so abstractly drawn.
This is the anime that Salvador Dali wishes he designed.
So true.
I'm not sure if they're actually supposed to be like normal people or if they're supposed to be like insignificant people, because like you had with Bakemonogatari, which had like irrelevant people were there but they were not drawn. So is it a stylistic decision to have irrelevant people just drawn as weird floating shapes, or is it like an actual floating shapes?
I think, as with any art, it's up to your interpretation. But I think the way I would read it in this particular instance is it actually was weird floating shapes. Yeah. Just because of the nature of the world that they're in.
Yeah, I agree with Doc on this one. Again, for reasons we'll get into in part 2, and you can tell I'm just raring to get stuck in on this one. But the actual story, if there isn't a theme to it, is, I would argue, reconciliation. And at that, it succeeds wonderfully in this particular show. But I won't go into it more about that just yet. But hopefully I at least did a decent job of trying to summarise it, because again, I feared that when you did say it was a bit of an obscure anime, that might be one of the reasons why, because it's not something that you can describe immediately without either A, giving everything away beforehand, or B, giving away far too little as to hook the viewer's interest in.
It's tough. It is, and then I think when relaying what this is to other people, it's important to mention how non-straightforward that the show is in terms of its storytelling.
Yes.
Each episode is kind of broken up into 3 chapters, if you will, and each chapter you'll see whether it takes place in the past or the present. And in the first half of the show especially, they hop back and forth between past and present, and then they all, for the last third, I think, bring everything back around to one timeline.
The first half essentially is spent entirely establishing the world and the significant characters.
Yep.
But they have to do it that way. I mean, I think
have to do it.
Yes, I don't want anyone thinking like, here's this like.
It's interesting. They do it in a very interesting way, where like they'll introduce something in like an early episode, which will be fully explained in a later episode, and then kind of be even more fully explained in an episode even later. It feels very organic to not have things not appear because they're not yet explained. So you're in this world, you're learning about the characters and their motivations and their stance on everything one by one, but you've already met them on previous episodes.
Yeah,
which I think was done very well.
It's an anime that I would say it doesn't initially set a solid ground. It builds the groundwork over time while everything else is already standing upon it, which can, for some people, make it a bit shaky. I mean, I did express to you, Doc, on Twitter, that I was a bit confounded by the episode 0. Admittedly, I now completely understand its place in the story, and it's a wild card episode, if you will. You could slot it in anywhere after episode 1, and it would actually make far more sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's better to have it as episode 0. First of all, you have all these ideas in your head. It makes you have all these ideas in your head about what things might be, which is interesting when you actually learn about the things. And then when the things that you see in episode 0 actually happen in the rest of the show, you're like, oh, that's the connection. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It sort of helped me put some things together, like, who is this person? Oh, wait, what did they do in episode 0? Oh, yeah, that's what they did.
And I think it's even more impressive when you know that they did that episode 2 years before, they started the television show. I mean, I'm not even sure they knew they were going to make that TV show when that original thing was animated.
Wow.
I couldn't tell because
No,
basically it's almost like it's a bunch of cutscenes, not cutscenes, but like it's a bunch of scenes that appear almost entirely like exactly the same in the actual show.
There's not a lot of connective tissue inside the episode itself between moment to moment. But again, I think in hindsight, like, it to me is a day in the life. That's, to me, how I would describe that episode and what it essentially represents. It is a day in the life of the crazy nonsense that is going on in this world, and it hints certainly at the broader plots and the character arcs that are to follow. But
it doesn't just hint. That's a spoiler.
Well, no. But on its own, as an introduction, I think that it can be off-putting people, but I would very strongly stress that there's often a free episode rule when it comes to trying out anime.
Sure.
Definitely do that with this one. Because
very much agree.
I would have regretted it immensely if I had decided not to continue watching this after just watching episode 0, just based on the fact that I would have presumed wrongly that it was a bit confusing.
So you mentioned that what you kind of thought it was about was reconciliation, and that's interesting. So I think we should all share kind of what we think the show is going for in a general way and what it's about. Again, just to let people know what it's thematically about, I should say.
It kind of tells you what it's about, like right before the opening song, though. It's a series about family and whatever else it says.
The opening moment before the intro song is very clear on what it is about. But
it also spoils a few things that are not entirely clear, but
if you're not looking for it, I mean, I think it's
if you're not supposed to know that it spoils things, so I ruined the entire thing for you.
No, I think it's fine.
I know.
I think you can just take it, if you take it on face value, then you'll be fine with it.
It's like telling someone that a JoJo opening spoils stuff. Of course.
Yes, that's true.
Like the entire story of any JoJo, like any JoJo part has been said like in the opening.
It's funny you should mention JoJo's because I'm going to bring up an amusing relation to this show later. But
oh man, how?
Oh, you're going to love it because I literally yelled it out loud when I first saw it happen. But I'll explain later. Anyway.
Oh, is it the?
No, go on. I think I know what you're going to say. Go on, Vogue. You got to say it.
Is it the part where Kodo is like, we're not Kodo, but like someone tries punching Kodo a lot?
Nope.
They go, all right.
Nope. That's not what I'm thinking of. That's not what I'm thinking of. I'll say 2 words, and that should hopefully give you an idea as to what I'm referring to. Hierophant Green.
Oh. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know it. Not only did I immediately think of that when I saw it happen with the prayer beads the first time, but then he actually fired them out like bullets.
Oh yeah.
And I just yelled out, "Emerald Splash!" Because that's literally what it was. Well.
Yeah, it's spoilers, and you just ties up people up with it.
Yes.
There is a lot, like Shadon mentioned. There's a lot of magic and magical realism.
It's weird.
Kind of things happening in this place that the normal kind of rules don't apply, and that becomes apparent very quickly.
Yeah.
It's weird because I feel like the one thing I'm going to criticize is that it doesn't really define the overall presence of magic in the world very well. Like, you in early episodes you get to see all those people that can use magic or whatever, but there's established that there's gods and everything, and you're like, oh, here's a priest that can use magic, and you're like, okay, how widespread is this?
Sure.
How many people can use magic? How common is it to see magic? It's kind of hinted at in the real world because the everyone's like surprised by the monk doing bunch of magic stuff, but in the other world, when it's not yet explained exactly what it is, it's not very well established.
Well, we can like go into specifics later, but I think that they tie all that stuff together pretty well. My problems weren't,
but I think it was a bit too late.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say my issues with the show were not that like mechanical, I guess, not like there's a plot hole or they didn't explain this or whatever.
No, I think they explained a lot of things fine.
But that's just my own. Yeah, I'm not trying to discount your take at all for it.
Like, I do think they explained this fine very much later on, but early on it's kind of confusing.
Sure. Oh, I understand that. There are a lot of parts that don't like they congeal at the end, but until then you might be kind of wondering if they're gonna stick the landing with this. Are they going to tie this together? And I think that they do.
Yeah, I will admit that I do overall, if I did have one criticism of this show, is I feel that the links between episodes and moments, and like as far as mechanics are concerned, are not either A, clear enough, or B, ultimately explained. There are particular moments I'll reference later. They're only... The thing is, though, they never once stopped me from... They never once stopped me to, like... I thought of it after the fact, but they didn't actually stop me and take me out of my immersion in the story at the time. So, it's more of a minor thing, but I think for me, the things that bind the whole thing that binds it all together, the overarching plot, and especially what happened towards the end a little bit, was a bit obtuse for me personally. But, again, me personally... Your mileage may vary.
It felt like a lot of things required knowledge of a bunch of religions that we're not.
You're referring to the Bodhisattva, I believe.
You remember the name?
I did because
don't.
Because I specifically realised
reference is a real religion. So.
Yep. When I saw that moment come up, I immediately thought I better actually check out what that is before the podcast. But the fact of the matter, I had to check it out says it all. That it was not immediately clear. So you are required to have at least some understanding of Buddhist mythology, at least to understand that concept.
Yes, and some stuff about Buddhism kind of surrounds the Kurama character. But that is all, I guess, kind of. That's one of those things that I think we touched on this last episode. That I've been kind of like, I've been in this for so long that sort of stuff bounces right off me, right? Yeah. The cultural sort of stuff that like may not be readily apparent to someone who like hasn't studied it or hasn't like been in anime or other Japanese culture for very long, but like so I just I'm kind of used to those elements being there.
Like it's like, okay, it's magic, I guess. Fine, it's magic, you can have it.
and it's not it's the understanding the story. It's not essential to understand that stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree, because if you think about it, what this essential series is really about is it's about emotion. It's not about mechanics. There is a plot where things kind of become apocalyptic towards the end, but the apocalypse is the backdrop. It is not the forefront. They're not trying to stop the apocalypse for the sake of stopping the apocalypse, but rather for the more human reason of, and human's an odd term to pick given what we'll get into, but
arguable.
But the more human reason of trying to resolve the issues surrounding the family.
Speaking of, as a family man myself, like I found this show incredibly touching because even if they did not tie all the kind of the plot elements together as well as they did, even if I wasn't satisfied by the ending, I would still found a lot of value in this show for all the small moments and vignettes that they show.
That is
the family interacting with each other.
I almost cried in every single one of them.
It was really beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, the way that they captured the sibling interaction and how children felt toward the parents and kind of looks that the parents exchanged over the heads of the children.
Yeah, there were all of the character focused stuff, all the vignettes, all the little family moments that you mentioned are easily the highlight of the show for me. As far as I'm concerned, the entire reason why I consume fiction is either A, to, as I said to you before, at least watch and enjoy something that's smartly made, or something that's smartly written and about smart character moments. And that's what this show is. It's great character moments. So, complaints that I may have about the mechanical links between things, that I can brush aside, because everything else is that good.
And like you said, they filter huge world events through kind of family and family dynamics.
Yeah.
Like certain things that are kind of global events, the way that they're presented to us is through like a family squabble.
Yeah.
That feels like really grounded and really, really real.
Yeah.
I truly loved all the family interactions.
Yeah.
I thought those were superb. Definitely the highlight of the thing for me, and the big thematic element. There's some stuff you could take away about, if you wanted to, about divinity, and kind of what the show may or may not be saying inadvertently about the concept of divinity. But like, I don't know. I think the main thing to kind of hone in on is the family stuff, is what they're saying about fatherhood, about siblinghood.
Yeah.
About,
if
marriage.
anything, I think the element you mentioned of divinity makes that all the more apparent, because by the end of this show, we're essentially dealing with world-ending divine events. We're talking biblical, Old Testament.
Very large scale everything.
A very large scale Old Testament kind of stuff. That is literally it. I'm not trying to make a Ghostbusters reference there, believe me. But that, to me, makes all the family stuff all the more important. Because as much as when you have a family squabble, I've had family squabbles over petty things, like moving out. To say, for example, when I first moved out, I had an argument with my mum because she assumed that when I said I had something important to tell her, the assumption she made was firstly that I had A, got someone pregnant, which I hadn't, and B...
You're gay.
No, that was actually the second one. The second point was that I was doing drugs. That's what she thought I was doing. Yeah. She thought I was either doing drugs or got someone pregnant when I wanted to tell her I was moving out. And then we've had other arguments in the past. Now, relative to what happens in Kyousougiga, that's small potatoes. Because what happens in Kyousougiga is the end of everything. That's it. But that's the point. Even versus the end of everything, and I think I'm going to have to tie us back to a show I mentioned last time, Evangelion, because in that show was also about the end of everything, but it was about the humanity and the struggles of the human soul before that, and how that ultimately mattered more than averting the end of the world. After all, you save the world, but if you're a broken hollow shell at the end of it, it don't matter. So that to me made Kyousougiga all the more enchanting, because all this high scale divine, godly stuff going on, and what's really most important is watching a conflict between a man and his daughter over father and daughter things.
Let's take a break, and then we'll move into Part B, our spoiler-laden review.
Spoilers ahead.
This episode of Warui Deshou is brought to you by Weeabooze Fine Liquors. This winter, curl up by the fire with a nice, relaxing bottle of Whiskey the Metal Idol, bringing you the taste you love and the craftsmanship you crave. Weeabooze. It's gundamn good.
My nephew liked the Power Rangers, and I did this on his birthday where he had all his friends around. They were like, Green Ranger. I said, let me show you the real Sentai. I'm going to show you the episode where Green Ranger actually died. And they were sitting there looking. A couple kids start crying like, no, Green Ranger can't be daddy. And the parents were like, what are you showing our kids?
The Anime World Order podcast.
Not suitable for children because the truth hurts.
Visit us online at www.animeworldorder.com.
それから荒木くん、
なんだ
I love you.
おめでとうございます。
悪いでしょう。
Welcome back to Warui.
Everyone dies.
Go.
The end.
You're
Thank
fired.
you.
Now you're fired, Bulgaria. I get no. Well, I guess we have to keep you. Actually, so you're not fired.
Yeah, my contract, and
It's
I still
ironclad.
haven't received my website money.
I signed my contracts on the back of a beer mat, so I don't know where that's gone.
Well, we're back with Warui Deshou, and we're going to now talk some more about Kyousougiga. We're gonna really dig into it. I know Shidan it seemed like he was really raring to go here and had some stuff to say. So why don't you start us off?
It's really hard to talk about this show without talking about spoilers because
that's again.
The shackles are off, people.
Yeah, that again actually makes me realize all the more why it's hard to recommend this show, just simply because when you try to recommend it, people will say, "Why do you like it?" and you'll go,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But to dive right in, I'm going to have to immediately get into one of my favourite episodes of the show, which, if I remember correctly, was episode 6, the one that focused on Yase. Was that...
Yase.
Yeah, Yase is like...
I think wasn't that 4? Yase is like the
numbering aside, it was the episode focused specifically on her.
I think it was 4. I think you're right. Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It was the cleaning episode where everyone gets rid of the stuff they don't want, sends it on the train. Yeah.
Now, the thing for me about this episode was that we, of course, had episodes devoted to each of the individual godly figures. We had one on Kurama. We had one on I'll call him Mioi, but his actual name is Yakushima. Is that right?
Yakushimaru.
Yakushima, yeah. I'm doing this on a script, so I can't remember the names.
Yeah, Yakushimaru.
Yakushima, yeah. And then Yase.
But it makes we can call him Mioi. That's fine. He's
the beads guy.
The title has been passed to him.
A bondage guy, whatever.
The title has been passed to him by God. He's
not
Mioi.
Kakuin, basically. But anyway, that episode,
the bondage guy,
had one of the best running character arcs in it for Yase of the entire show. It's the best one, and the reason for this is
it?
I believe so. I'll explain why.
She doesn't evolve at all, though.
I'm going to get back.
It's not even an arc.
I'm going to get back to that later, but I actually believe she already had, and I'll explain why. Now, the episode's title is, and I'm going off memory here. It's basically something like a girl and her demons. Is that right?
Yeah, I think monsters is what it's called in the one I have. But yeah, that's pretty
demons.
much
her monsters.
Right. This might weaken my argument in a bit because of the translation thing. But...
Yeah, which like is a misdirection because she has actual monsters, but
yeah,
we'd have to know. I don't know what the actual word is. So
yeah,
it's.
But anyway, I'm going by the demon thing. The thing that we learn about her very quickly is that she's keeping a hold of a teacup. It's her one treasured memory of her time with her mum, who is now no longer there. Funnily enough, she also was the character that most tied into the Alice in Wonderland reference, which was quite apparent. Sure. I mean, they actually had the book. The book was there. There was a scene where Koso was reading it on underneath a tree, which, funnily enough, is the opening to Alice in Wonderland, at least as far as the Disney film is concerned. But anyway, so she is the Mad Hatter character of that. And that, to me, was the only real way the Alice in Wonderland thing tied back. I couldn't recognise any other references to the character there. But the reason
there was a rabbit.
There was a rabbit. That was the big one. That was the big one.
Yeah. There wasn't like
creature.
What is up with that tall rabbit? Holy shit!
Yeah, he stole the Coke.
He shows up. He steals a soda, and then he's gone.
And then he never. It was great.
I love it.
That moment was fantastic, even though it had no real relevance.
We have
it was
two rabbits, though.
Yeah,
God was a rabbit.
Yeah, God and. God is like a tiny rabbit, a monkey, and a frog.
The Trinity, right there.
Who appeared multiple times, I should point out, throughout the show's run.
He did. I kept noticing, and I'm like, what is this?
So that's who they are, I was like at the end. To get back on track, though, what happens is that one of Yase's entourage, a little impish little creature, steals the teacup and sends it away in the throwing away ceremony, where... Because of the way the world is constructed, you can't actually get rid of anything permanently, with one exception, which we'll come back to later when we discuss the story broad. But this way, you can actually throw stuff out and get rid of it forever. So that teacup, the thing that was their most treasured possession, was gone. Period. Not coming back.
Not her most treasured possession. She's just one of her most treasured.
One of her most.
It's a lot of them.
It's definitely up there. But the interpretation I took was that the entourage she has were essentially creatures of her own creation. She spent all her time, of course, in her having tea parties and such.
Yes.
And going by the demon thing. Now, again, this could be a mistranslation, so I could be basing this completely off the shakiest of foundations, but the thing that I love was I took it to mean demons of a psychological nature, not of a spiritual one. And that made me then think, if this creature was a creation of her own, and it is the one that acted to get rid of that, did that ultimately reveal a side of her that we had not been otherwise seen? That she pined longingly for a mother, and yet ultimately, in the end, a being of her own creation, a part of her mind, was willing to let that go, while the rest of her could not. That I found absolutely fascinating.
That is really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah. Again, I could be based on...
Me neither, but it doesn't sound very, I don't know. Not with what she does in general.
Well, no.
Well, I mean, maybe there's part of her that's secretly angry with her mother for leaving.
Yeah, that's essentially it for me. Like, that there was a small part of her that acted, whereas the rest of her held on. That she was conflicted, expressed her conflicts. That she could have moved on, but ultimately was being held back by herself. And that one tiny little part, it was only, after all, a very small creature. Like, the rest of her entourage includes this hilariously stiff butler who never says anything, but he's constantly furrowing. The butler's great.
His face is great.
His face is great. He's constantly furrowing his...
Somehow, he never says anything, and somehow he narrated why Yase is keeping all the stuff.
Yeah, the furrowing of his mustache particularly was fantastic, like in that kind of, oh, not this again.
Koto understood.
Yeah, Koto understood perfectly. So that, for me, was the moment. That was, like, the best moment of the show for me, at least as far as that interpretation goes.
I think people have struggled. I mean, I'm going to go out on a fucking limb here and probably get pilloried for it, but because of my ignorance. But I do think people, translators, and have kind of struggled with how to fit the kind of mythology, lore, religious stuff of Japan into our own categories for translation, because they have more categories than we do.
Yeah.
And so a lot of like their kind of monsters and what have you don't fit very well into words like monster and demon, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, because monsters in Japan could be... I mean, there are even monsters in, say, Nordic mythology, like Great Sea Serpent, the Fenrir Wolf, and all that. So the word can be loose, but to get away from that, that episode for me, that particular one where we got to see that happen, and eventually also get to see her interact with Kurama, and how those two characters are essentially opposite ends of the spectrum.
Oh yes.
Yase is chaos. Kurama is order. She is extrovert. He is introvert. They are about as opposite as one can get, short from simply not both being human looking. Not to mention, I should also point out, was Yase's design. She is a princess, but also I was remarked on the fact that her eyes are essentially stars, twinkles, which reflected her cupidity, if you will, like that she was just a very young and immature child. And I think that for me overall, like, it was the most well-rounded and interesting look into the individual characters and how what happens to them change them. Because I have to be frank, with Kurama's episode, a lot of that actually focused more on the lead technician whose name I forget. Admittedly, very funny because that was her essentially getting wasted in a bar with what looked like
Shoko,
yeah. That was fun.
It focused on her to, I guess, show that basically his entire thing was that he was determined to leave the place.
Yeah, he was, but because he was that's the ironic.
He was trying to break it. He was trying to understand and figure it out methodically because, like you said, he wanted out.
Yeah, he wanted out.
He didn't want to just wait for his parents to come back.
Yeah, he was taking action, but the irony is that because he was introverted as a character, he was introverted to the audience, at least to me, and it made it a bit more difficult for me to try and understand him.
He certainly has emotional problems, like I think it's interesting. So you, like you said, you have Yase, who is an extrovert, who screams, who turns into a giant Godzilla-esque monster stomping around, and then you have Kurama, very reserved, but they both have deep emotional problems.
Yeah. Can I just point out, by the way, that I found the image in that episode focused on Yase of the home being fixed up by plasters. That was a wonderful image. I thought that was amazing. Not just for the obvious broken home metaphor, but just because it was so surreal, and yet it's so very fitting for what's going on. I loved that moment just when I saw it. It just came by in maybe 2 seconds and then was gone. But
there's like giant holes in the wall, and you see 2 planks over the giant hole in the wall. And it's so cute.
Sticking plasters, giant sticking plasters to fix a broken home.
Vorgalia, who was your favorite character?
Oh no, I don't know. It's weird to talk about favorite characters, to me at least, because I like characters for different reasons. I guess personally, I mean, I identified with old Koto. I mean,
the mom.
Yeah.
Okay.
For whatever reason, but she kind of ended up being a bit useless in the show.
So mean.
Well, no, she acts motherly and everything, but she comes in and basically does nothing besides be a motivation for things to happen.
She has no agency, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
But she loves the kids.
They
receive her love,
and that's why she's my favorite.
And
they're so cute.
And she helps. She helps. I feel like she helps steer.
Yeah, she does.
God
she is the motivation for it.
To the right decision.
She is the voice of reason, essentially. Can I just point out, by the way, that that moment, and I think this is probably one of the familiar moments that you said you liked so much, but even to a hardened, cold-hearted bastard like myself, that moment where Koso Elder sits down with Koso Jr. and just starts combing her hair, wow. Let's just put it this way: if I were the Grinch, my heart did grow 3 sizes that day when that happened.
It was beautiful.
It was.
It was
moment.
very moving.
Very terrible. I mean, not to mention when you bear in mind that you realise that Ko is a tomboy. Koso younger, that is. Koso the younger. She's a tomboy.
Raised by a single father, so that's how that goes.
Yeah, I feel like she was kind of not forced, but her environment made her so.
Yeah. And that, for me, the hair combing moment in particular then just struck a chord with me, because that's the first time that's ever happened where she's had motherly love of that sort. And that made it all the more special. It was just a small moment, barely any dialogue between them, but it was very heartwarming. I mean, I'm really not of any opinion on dads raising daughters, mothers raising sons, or whatever. At the end of the day, I'm more interested in the quality of a person rather than if they fit a conforming stereotype. But it was just something nice. It was just nice to see.
Even if she had a mom working at the same position as her dad, it would have worked the same.
She could have very well turned out the same way. Absolutely.
Well, you see earlier in the show that that she longed for her mom whenever, as a young girl, she sleepily wandered into and unlocked the secret room that her dad had the Looking Glass City painting in, and her mom, as a drawn rabbit, got to interact with her briefly, and that lit up her world. I mean, she just was so happy.
Her mom as a drawn rabbit, I don't think anyone will understand because we haven't explained the plot yet.
No, yeah, you're right. So we should probably
let's backtrack just a little bit.
Yeah, essentially, like the Looking Glass City. Well, this is a story about a monk that can basically perform magic. Can make the way it's introduced in the beginning is that he draws things and he can make them appear. And so at some point he just draws stuff, and he draws a black rabbit, and the black rabbit sticks around. And it starts loving him. It starts developing feelings towards him. And so someday some Buddha thingy.
Bodhisattva.
Yes.
A being in
thing.
the wide spiritual world of Kyousougiga.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just says, hey, you want to make a deal, Black Rabbit?
Yeah, and wait, what was the deal?
That
She would get the body. The rabbit would get her body, but would have to return it.
She would have to return it once he returned her love. She'd be responsible for returning her human form back to the Bodhisattva.
It was an extended Blockbusters loan, and they were going to get a late fee if they didn't get it back.
Which is weird because of how does she get the body later when she appears?
That was actually the prayer beads, I believe. That then end up restoring her.
No, they're not used though. Like Kodo steps in through a portal, and then there's Lady.
Perhaps
Kodo.
I think, I don't know, that might be a thing that they don't actually nail down too well. I was gonna say, so later on in the show we see her basically on the moon, right? And that's the thing. Maybe they just threw her human body,
not exactly on the moon.
Well, just into some weird dimensional plane. Like maybe they just stuck her there, but earlier she had appeared to young Koto as a rabbit, so as her original rabbit self. So like at some point the body was taken from her. So how did she get it back? That's the I don't know.
The body was she appeared as a rabbit, but it had some weird discoloration around the edges, and disappeared the moment Koto tried to touch it. So was that because it was like
an extension of herself and not her actual
projection? Yeah.
Possibly. Maybe it was the that same energy of Koto's that could annihilate things in that world that that somehow gave her body. I don't know. I'm not sure.
It goes back to what I said before about the mechanical problems.
The power that lets. We'll talk about.
Yeah, we are getting ahead of ourselves once again.
So essentially, they love each other. The monk starts developing feelings towards the rabbit, which now has a body, and its name is Lady Koto. And at some point, they get 3 children. They get one human child that they rescue him from.
Rescues her subjected to him.
It's the creepiest thing ever.
Yeah, that really freaked.
It's okay, the kid is about the kid's family dies.
Yes, Yakushimaru was part of the family whose home was burned down, and he had committed seppuku and was lying there waiting to die and join his family.
And then the priest takes him to his house, revives him, and is like, okay, you're my son now.
Andrew Morsel.
Because he tried to kill himself again.
And he failed.
No luck.
It's like, hey, look, a dead kid. Let's make him our son.
The thing that
you're my son
is one
now.
Of the things that I ended up really not liking Inari, the priest name. I thought he was quite he was a disgusting character to me by the end. So I mean, redeemed, yes, he made the right decision in the end, but man, I really did not like his character. And
I don't think he was disgusting. He just considering who he is. He's considering who he is. He would place less value on individual human life and would see them as more.
To me, the way it works is that he spent so much of his time, because as a godly being, working for the benefit of others, that it spun very much round in the other direction.
We should say eventually he's revealed to be God, but it would actually be more accurate to say that he's a being called a demiurge. So in other Western religions, particularly Gnosticism, you have God, the supreme being, and then you have some divinities that are directly under him, and the demiurge is one of those kind of divine beings who are responsible for creating the physical world. And that's what he is. He is this divinity who existed to create stuff.
Yeah,
and we don't know that in the beginning. That is revealed much later.
Yeah.
Yes, in the end, basically, episode 9, He's like, it's a wonderful scene because Kodo he gives a heartfelt speech and he's like, great. Oh
God,
way,
yes.
I'm God.
I'm basically God.
You see, I'm God, so blah blah. It's beautiful.
I will say that when that happened, when Yakushima was reborn, I of course can't understand Japanese. I can say Daijobu and that's really about it. Great. But the point I'm making is that there are things in language that I can say are fairly universal, such as tone, sense of excitement, like, volume and such. So when I see this man who has just revived a kid who, I mean, not getting into the thorny issue of suicide here, but I can at least understand why he did it, because of course no more family, no more life, etc., etc. And he gets that choice taken away from him, and he's not allowed to make that choice again. And the guy who did that to him is saying all of this in the most nonchalant, I would like, French fries with my burger, please manner. It made my skin crawl.
I would like some kids with my wife.
Yes.
That's it.
I think, yes. And this goes back to maybe what the show might be saying about Divinity is kind of the way that he made these choices that are huge choices for beings like us on such a whim. It made them all feel really gross.
It almost felt
the fact that
that's the part that weirded me out.
They took Yakushimaru's decision to end his life away from him, and he kept doing that, like making these big decisions on a whim. The decision to leave, the decision to give him the prayer beads, the decision to like kind of turn the key that would like kind of start the end of everything. Like he just was doing all these things, and was like keeping all the information to himself.
He doesn't like himself. He was doing all these things because he doesn't like himself. Which is like
exactly like that, like these things that affected other people in these very profound ways. Again, because he was so self-involved, looking to fill some kind of void he had. You know what I mean? And you should talk about how the other children came into being.
I think like the story itself is like so high, and it doesn't really place too much importance on individual lives that I didn't really care about. Oh, people are gonna die. Well, he can create life. That's what he does.
Yeah, but they're not those people. But those people are gonna die.
Bear in mind that he
can make identical people.
Yeah,
them.
Well, bear in mind though, Vorg, that he did after all create, after many fashions, his 4 children, and while he might ultimately have killed them, he discarded them
in multiple ways.
He discarded them. So even if he has the power to create life after wiping it out, that does not necessarily mean he is going to give it fair and due treatment. He didn't with his own children.
So, yes, okay, before we go further down this path, we should just say, so yes, he rescued Yakushimaru, adopted him. Yakushimaru eventually
forcefully adopted him.
Okay, fine, I accept this way of life now, that's fine. And so, because Inari, the priest, saw that his son was not happy or lonely, he thought, I'll make you some siblings. And so, in the same way that he created Koto, he drew Yase, a demon girl, and Kurama,
Lady Koto, Mom Koto.
Yes, sorry, it's a Mrs. Koto. So those are the 3 siblings that make up the Council of 3, who kind of run things in the Looking Glass City when the show starts in the present timeline. The priest has another child. Inari has another daughter. To be honest with you, I had no idea how she came into being.
The stalk.
Yeah, I mentioned that the story is beautiful, which is explained in episode 1, but none of the forceful adoption thing is there. In episode 1, the story is okay, they love each other, they get kids, they're really happy, and then
the rug's pulled from underneath you.
Not the church, but the
shrine,
the temple rather.
The shrine, I think they're called.
The shrine, yeah, the shrine.
It's really just...
Which is religious organization that...
God decided not to... He didn't want to fuck around with anything, so his 2 children made this thing called the Shrine.
They basically
to run
maintain
things.
order.
He outsourced.
And he's like, okay, the temple knows about us, and they don't like it, and so they go into this world inside the painting to hide from the temple, and then they have fun there because they made the place, they run it. But at some point, Mom Koto is like, I didn't fulfill my promise. I didn't fulfill my end of the deal. I was supposed to give up the body when you returned my love. And she's like, I have to return. And he's like, I'll go with you. And then they leave.
She's prompted to leave because they keep having these sort of foreboding dreams about the world ending, and she believes it's because she hasn't fulfilled her contract.
Irony is their leaving actually perpetuates those events that they dream about.
And so the rest of the show is basically what happens to their 3 children that are basically left alone in like this place. So and they haven't, like, nobody has entered the painting
until
since their parents have left.
Right.
And which makes the arrival of Kid Koto like such a big deal, because it's like, we've been here for ages. Some of them have been trying to get out.
Didn't one of the scientists come in from the outside?
That was before the parents left.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Okay, but sorry, yes, Koto comes in.
And then there's like lightning from the sky, and things stop. Like in this world, things just
basically you can't permanently destroy anything in that world, and that also ties back to the throwing things away. Ritual.
But like at that moment, things stop getting repaired on their own. Like lightning, and everyone's like,
I took it to mean
our parents back.
Sorry to interrupt, but
is mom back?
When you said about things not repairing, I took it to mean that it was just things that Koto herself destroyed with a hammer. Not that it was a universal.
Yeah, no. Because there was like a scene with a woman looking at a scooter, and it's like, it's not being repaired because it was emitting smoke and everything.
Oh.
So you assumed, like, at that moment, everything just stopped self-repairing.
Ah.
For the moment of, like, that she came in.
Oh, but then they think...
And, like, she comes in, everyone's like, is mom back? And they go in, and they see this girl that's like, yes, I'm here. Where am I? Episode ends.
Right.
And that's such a good setup.
That is pretty great.
That is such a good mystery, like, not exactly a mystery, but that's such a good setup that it got me hooked in for like the rest of the show. Did you watch episode 10.5?
I actually didn't watch either of the 0.5 commentary specials.
5.5 is like some voice actresses visiting places that are shown in the anime. Which I didn't watch fully. Episode 10.5, I still didn't watch fully, but it explains why, Kid Koto has a hammer that she made that's made of, I don't know, a bubble.
Awesome. It's made of awesome.
Yeah, it's like a galaxy.
It's made of awesome, yeah. And if she hits stuff with it, it can self-repair. In the thing, they explained that it was actually the priest's soul.
Yeah, because you might recall that he said he would return with the beginning and the end. Now, in the anime, it's supposedly meant to be the 2 spirits that accompany Ko, her younger brothers, not actually related, but she treats them in a familial sense. But for me, the beginning and the end, the beginning is the
beads.
The beads, the end is the hammer.
Yeah.
Create, destroy. Yeah, and both of those were gifted by Koso and Yakushima's dad. He technically didn't bring it with them, mind you, but they were certainly there when he returned.
Well, he did.
He did bring them with him. Like when they first went in, he brought the.
Oh
beans.
no, I mean say on his return. I mean
when
say.
the second coming. Well,
on his return,
he didn't.
No.
Yeah, he said he would return with the beginning and the end.
He returned to kind of trigger.
Yeah, maybe it was the triggering of the
maybe
beans, or
more
perhaps
the
it was
themselves.
Koto herself.
Because like he stabs Koto and then turns like the sword as if it was a key.
That made no sense, by the way. I had no idea what was going on when that happened.
I assume later on in episode 10.5 it's explained, but so like my question is Lady Koto has her body when they find her, because like they introduce a bunch of characters and then the older brother is like, okay, what is that hammer made of? That hammer is made of like energy and stuff. We can find a way to make Koto find her mom, and they do it. She finds her mom, and then they go back, and like her mom has her normal body and everything, and I'm like, okay, why did mom have to stay away? Why didn't she give up the body? Why did Dad not come back? Is it because he doesn't care? Or is it? But like he cared about Koto.
A lot of questions there. So the turning of the key on Koto's heart when she was stabbed, I think that might have been to set her down the path of destroying the planes.
Yeah.
That was his first kind of jab, and then the rest of the things she was hearing were meant to push her.
You've seen Naked Gun. It's like the tape with like, the lady and the gun.
Oh man. Okay, and so your other questions were why did mom why did Koto
stay away? Like what
need to stay away?
Prevented her from going back?
Well, I think she said that she wasn't going to come back until it was with
until
their dad
came for her.
Yeah, she wanted to come with Dad, and she was trapped in the place,
like a holy place or
where
something?
she was. Yes,
yeah,
and Inari couldn't free her. He said he didn't even have the power to do that, and I can only assume that's because she was in breach of her original contract.
Well, he himself, the power that was used to eventually free her is the hammer, which came from him, so he no longer had the ability to do it.
Oh, that is a good explanation as well.
Yeah, so the way I saw it was that basically there's the fight with the giant robot, because of course there's a fight with a giant robot.
So good.
It wasn't a big fight though.
Well, the thing that happened was I think that they were trying to basically, at least as far as Kurama was concerned, have Koto fight the giant robot to goad her into applying enough force with the hammer in order to break out.
No, in order, I don't know. It was like to lure her near the robot so the robot could eat her, and there's like something
there's a
inside
portal
of her.
in there, yeah.
Because like before they mention the they have the robot fight, they talk about the hammer, and they're like, okay, like the hammer destroys stuff and keeps them destroyed because it's made of like the same type of energy that repairs things. So like it's like magnetism, two
opposing poles,
two things of the same energy like repel each other and like don't work. But like if we have something of the opposite kind of energy, we could have like a huge result. And I assumed that's what they had in the thing's mouth.
Yes.
That's what they had contained there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like, she entered there with the hammer, and that like I don't know, granted her wishes or something. I don't know.
It could basically flush the space-time continuum down the toilet.
Yeah.
Gone. But the thing is, I'm not. The common trend I think that we're making with what we're saying in a somewhat negative aspect about the show is, again, going back to what I said earlier, it's the mechanics.
Stuff that I don't care about as much.
Yeah, exactly. To be honest, to weight the worth of the show as far as sort of the emotional aspects of it, the the family related stuff, the character related stuff, that to me holds far more water than worrying about the mechanics. I mean, if it had been the other way around, where no one's motivations made any sense, but everything was mechanically sound, I would have the completely opposite reaction to this show. But I don't.
Yeah. I think so. I guess, answer a question I posed earlier to Borgelia. My own favorite character in the show is definitely Koto, the girl, the main character in the story.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I found her to be such just a breath of fresh air. I mean, everyone else was kind of, like, involved in their own problems and had all these hang-ups. And she had her own hang-ups, but she was upfront about them. And she was so full of positivity and so full of, like, look forward, head up, let's march through this together.
Yeah.
And she just brought such brightness to the show and to everyone around her. And I mean, she really helped change, especially Yakushimaru.
You have hit it in a nutshell. From the very moment she arrives in the show, she is the force of change. I mentioned before about the hammer breaking things and making sure, because, you know, you break something and there are now consequences. If for example, my monitor broke now on my computer, can't use computer. I have to then deal with the consequences of that act. And because things were not breaking, both the world, or rather not changing, say the physical world, nor the three that were there, her arrival is the force of change. And that happens in families. And that is what happens here. The fourth child arrives. They don't, of course, know that immediately, but that doesn't matter because she's a new presence in town that has a tremendous impact. She drives the story forward and drives changes in all the other characters. But, as you rightly point out, I do agree that her positive elements as well, just the very fun-loving nature of her, also really helps you come attached to the characters to enjoy her presence.
There's no guile there with her. I mean, she just gives a shit about Yase and Kurama and all those guys. Yeah,
she's earnest. Absolutely.
I mean, when how far out of her way she goes to help find the teacup.
Yeah, again with Yase,
to get a problem that doesn't concern her very much.
Yeah, to get Kurama's teacup from him.
Yes, that too.
Yeah, she just gets it from him, and kudos to Kurama for actually eventually giving it up, showing. But then again, like you can see there, these two characters otherwise don't really interact, Kurama and Yase, outside the Council of Three meetings, which for all intents and purposes are basically boardroom stuff. That it's not like, you know, socializing with each other. But she helps repair a little bit of a bond there. Makes him realize, oh yeah, that's my sister, and she's in trouble, she's hurting. Let me do what I can to try and help her. She acts as the force of change.
She does bring the three characters together.
Yeah.
In some neat ways too. I mean, because they really had grown very much apart, very separate. They lived in their own regions of the world, were doing their own things, met occasionally at the council, but I mean, they just weren't very close until Koto really shook them up.
You said on Twitter that you thought this show was short and sweet. I thought it was about 2 episodes too long.
Wow.
Because they get, a bit unreasonably talky near the end, and they keep not. I don't mind exposition because I saw the entire thing as like some sort of a mystery. Why is Koto here? What's happening with this world? What is it? What is everything? And I thought, like, the resolution itself I liked a lot because it was complex enough to be like a good payoff for the mystery side, at least. My personal, like, whatever I think of as a mystery. But near the end, they got a bit talky, explaining things that were already explained.
Mechanical stuff again.
Kinda, yeah. It just felt like the pacing grinded to a halt around like episode 8 or 7, whatever. Somewhere.
I think it was
there.
8. I think 8, 9, and 10 are the portion that you're talking
like all
about.
of them, like the
when Inari comes back at the end of 7.
Bit.
And then
the ending bit should have been trimmed down.
Oh, I liked all the dialogue, but maybe that's just because...
I did too. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
When I say it should have been trimmed down, there's like... I don't mind because I enjoy it so much, but so my threshold for not enjoying something is like really high.
But
so
mine is not so high.
If I notice, no, I mean, I'm gonna enjoy anything as long as the dialogue is fun. I mean,
it was good.
If I notice, I take it that like if I say, oh, this is dragging on a bit, to everyone else would probably say this is dragging on a lot.
Oh, maybe I think I don't know. I think I like talkie shows, so maybe I'm actually worse than you. Like, because I really got wrapped up in the stuff they were talking about. I think.
So did I.
That they touched on some really interesting topics that were certainly dealing with world mechanics in the show, but had some broader implications that I really enjoyed thinking about.
Yakushima's self-identity.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. There's the whole bit in episode 8, the conversation that Koto has with the chief priest of the shrine is kind of directed at religion and religious law in a certain way, because basically he's saying, okay, so we have discovered this place that your father illicitly created, and it's throwing the rest of the universe, the other 12 planes, out of balance, and if it continues to exist, it's going to destroy the entire universe. So we need to eliminate it, right? I mean, it shouldn't be allowed to exist, because when the universe was made, there were only 12, so the 13th shouldn't be allowed to exist. And Koto's kind of rejoinder, like, well, you say it shouldn't be allowed to exist, but here it is.
Yeah,
it exists already.
Yeah,
it's out there in the world.
Exactly the same.
Why can't we
don't
figure out how to make the best of what has happened?
Yeah, we don't actually see the consequences of the 13th world existing in any of the other worlds until the 13th world itself is harmed. We don't. Yeah. That's not actually shown at any point. He offers only a very vague, very metaphysical explanation.
I guess they do have a point, because okay, the guy creates his own plane, and it isn't governed by God's rules or whatever. It has its own rules. So if he can create a plane that he can fully control, he can directly harm other planes by not managing the plane that he created properly. I think they did have a sort of a valid argument, but Koto also had I think more valid one.
A much better one, yeah.
It's interesting because that scene was playing. I'm like, okay, I want to see what this asshole is gonna say. I want to see.
Yeah.
And then there's I want to see his reaction, and he opens his mouth, and I'm like, yes, we're gonna get this cool debate, and then the priest comes up and is like, that was so cool. By the way, I'm God. That was the moment.
Can I?
Everything is sidetracked. What?
Can I just throw something out, by the way? I think that will put the whole creating the plane thing in context. Let me ask you a question, Doc. Would you say that your family, your wife and your kids, are your world?
They are, yes.
Now apply that reason of thinking to what's happening in Kyousougiga. He literally creates his own world for his family. That is the metaphor I see behind his actions.
He said as much, I believe, toward the end that.
Yeah.
So he was, life for him was just kind of an aimless wandering. He didn't feel like he had a lot of purpose because he was abandoned by his father, and he didn't think that his new job as observer, it didn't mesh well with his personality and gifts until he had a family, and that anchored him and oriented his life and gave him structure and purpose, and it made his world.
They're his world.
Yeah. Well, the way I see it, therefore, is I think the ultimate message of the show is that it's even against the world-ending, apocalyptic, Days of Future Past, the Armageddon, whatever you want to call it, scenario that's happening where all things will end. It's the family moments and the family heart that is the most important thing to take care of in the immediate moment. I mean, you could.
But the world destruction was directly tied to how well the family stuff is going to go. It's not like, oh, the world is getting destroyed, let's make up with my dad. No, it's
let's make up with my dad because
I gotta talk to my dad because my dad is trying to destroy the world.
Yeah. because he's my dad, not because of his actions, but because of who he is as a person. That, I think, it's trying to essentially emphasize the value of the family above and beyond external events.
I don't know. The way I saw it was like, okay, that's just like the family events are the center, and like it's not like even against world destroying events. The world destroying events are just nothing more but a consequence. So like I didn't see it as family through adversity. It was like family and like with like higher stakes.
Family first, I think, is the intent I'm trying to get across. Family first.
Yeah. So exactly. So even though there were these higher stakes, they still had to navigate the family dynamics.
Yeah.
Those things are universal to all families and important to all families, kind of regardless of like where the family is.
There is something I want to say though, about the ending, and I'm offering what you might call a dark horse interpretation here. And I'm going to stress ahead of time, this is not a critique of the show, it's not a criticism, it's just food for thought. A lot of the show
You son of a...
Don't worry, Doc, don't worry. But one of the things I noted throughout the show was that there was, particularly in the council chamber, there were mobiles. Mobiles, of course, being the things you hanged over children's cribs.
May I just briefly point out, like, before we move ahead and never mention the Council of Three again, that actually was the scene that hooked me into the show, was the first Council of Three scene, because a creator that I've written about before, Ikuhara, Kunihiko Ikuhara, has directed shows like Revolutionary Girl Utena, Moaru Penguin Drum, and Yorikuma Arashi. Like, there's always some kind of like star chamber, right? Some kind of like secret council meeting, and it's always abstract imagery and just crazy things happening there. So like that scene felt like something of an homage to me, combined with Yase's character design, which is very Utena, very much from that show, which is like gets its character designs and influenced by way of Rose of Versailles. But I'm getting off track here. That is just to say that the Ikuhara-ness of that council really grabbed me. It was a very cool and unique
it looked great
setting there. But I'm sorry, Shadon, go ahead.
No, it's quite okay. But the mobile thing was the only, out of all the crazy images that were there, like the random floating orbs, the spiraling blocks, the guys who were basically like, firing range targets, but they were like linoleum patterns. Like, out of all the crazy images in this show, that was one of the ones I took home from, because it looked like what you hang over babies' cribs, mobiles. Mm-hmm. Like, if you play Fallout 4, you can interact with the mobile of Sean's crib. But anyway, the thing I want to point out about this is that I realised that they are essentially still children. And at the end of the show, when all is said and done, the family unit is restored, and they have an addition in that Koso is now permanently merged into the family unit as a whole. But have things ultimately changed? The way
they have.
Let me explain. The way I'm seeing this is that if you take the world that they are in as their crib, they've not left it. No, they're still children. And I wonder to myself, like, this new status quo that's been set up, going beyond the scope of the series as we have presented it, what happens next? I find it interesting that the family has returned together, and they have Koso now. But Eternity can get boring. Where do they go from here? I mean...
Well, I don't think that's gonna be too much of a problem. I mean, they do have the power of creation now, I guess. But, like, things changing between the family is what they start saying in, like, episode 9.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm so bad with names, but, like, the princess person and the older brother person.
Kurama.
Yase and
Kurama.
Older brother.
Yeah.
Whatever. That they're just there to ease the beads guy into taking care of like the world, into starting to take responsibility. And the thing that changes is that now the beads guy starts taking responsibility. Like, the entire family dynamic kind of changed.
Yeah. Well, I'm 28. I have 2 younger sisters who are both twins, who are 26. Father and mother, of course. Now, my family has now spread off to different areas, as you do inevitably when you get older. My mum still lives at the house I lived in as a kid. My dad lives relatively nearby in an apartment. One of my sisters lives in Liverpool, your favourite city from the UK, I believe, Doc. And my other sister lives somewhere in not too far outside of Manchester. But we've all developed our own lives now. And as I'm offering this only as a dark horse interpretation, because I'm not offering this as a criticism, because I ultimately think the ending is very good. But it makes me wonder, like, where next? Things won't remain ultimately as they are forever. Will they break off and go elsewhere? Over time, will the family members develop their own needs to explore? I mean, Koso, after all, did arrive here out of a desire for finding a mum. What happens next?
My gut response to that would be, I guess, that the show, I don't know. I tend to think about stories like themes first, and everything being in service of like messages that the show is trying to convey. I feel like the show's like, but that, I don't know. I don't want to, like, as an author, that might feel to you like I'm kind of making the characters just vehicles and like belittling them somewhat, because I don't want to do that. But to me, it just feels like a complete story. It is. Maybe it wasn't concerned with, or maybe didn't want to necessarily talk about what happens next. Just that repairing the broken family and restoring those relationships, and kind of everyone getting their shit together and figuring out that they need each other was the main kind of point of it, more so than like, here's how we solve the apocalypse, right? Like, I don't think that's like the point of the show. It's like that stuff. I think it's this, and
here's how we solve.
Argue with me here, Vorg. I'm not trying to. Like, all that stuff is really cool. I just think it's very much secondary. It's like, it's the surface layer to the family stuff.
Yeah, I agree 100%, but because I'm a huge nerd, let me answer your question, Shadon. So essentially, they couldn't, the family couldn't really pursue any of their ambitions because they were trapped in a hidden world. None of them were like supposed to exist because they're drawings. They were afraid of like persecution and stuff, and they couldn't even leave the world. But now that they have the power of creation, now that God has given them the okay basically to exist,
they were waiting on Jesus to come back, and he came back.
Now they can go anywhere. Now they can do anything. Now they have like not exactly free reign, but
free will.
They're not persecuted anymore. They can like exist in whatever plane they want. They can do whatever they do with their own plane. They're not afraid of like their plane being discovered.
Yeah.
So
eternity
is of course going to get boring because it's eternity, but it's you see everything ending up the way it did because the life in the glass Kyoto thingy was really limited in what they could do.
Yeah.
But now they have all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Their eternity's gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah. It takes a long time to get to eternity after all. But it's not me criticizing, just offering an alternate.
No, it's really interesting. Do you think it matters that the non-human characters don't change very much? I was thinking about that. Like, so it's, it's important for humans to grow and evolve.
They essentially have no arcs. It's like they're not you can easily see from early on that they're not the protagonists because they stay the same.
I would not agree that they stay the same, but rather that their arcs are not over such a wide berth as the others are.
Yeah.
That the changes are relatively small.
Yase definitely has something a trial she overcomes.
Yeah, that again.
When she realizes that
Yase it's not really a trial, it's that she didn't believe something, and then she saw evidence of it being true, and then she believes it.
Well, so here's what I thought that after, so their mom came back, and then she left, right? And then Yase basically had a psychological breakdown. And I saw it as her working through that, and then by the end, she had to work through it because it seemed that her memory was back and she knew who people were, and she could talk to her brother freely.
I think what I was trying to say essentially about interpretation is that I think that there are one of two ways there are two ways this anime could have ended. We have the ending which we were given, which I was very happy with, left me with a smile on my face, can't argue with that. And the ending which I foresaw as an alternative would be, I'm having to diverge off into a very odd tangent here, so please bear with me. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. But there is a romantic comedy I watched once, and yes, this is going there, called The Breakup. This was starring Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston. Now, I cannot tell you a single point about the story of that film beyond it being about breakup. But the thing that I found fascinating was that after all was said and done, they do not hook back up. They moved on and go their separate ways. And I thought to myself, when I'm thinking about Kyousougiga and how it could have ended differently, could something similar have happened potentially in a different interpretation of the story? Again, just a dark horse interpretation, not going to hold against the show in any way, but just food for thought that they're basically back to factory reset here, just with Koso added on.
Not entirely factory reset.
Entirely.
Dad basically changed his viewpoint.
He really
on
did.
A lot of
he
things.
actually learned something for once.
He's not a dick anymore. As much.
Yeah, when him being a dick was what introduced problems in the first place. So now he's not a dick.
Create the conflict.
Can I just talk about how much I dislike Inari for a while?
Go for it. Go full hog, dog.
That motherfucker. I mean,
my misanthrope part doesn't allow me to dislike him because I get it.
He was
treating.
Go ahead.
You're not. He's not supposed to view humans as completely equals, and I assume he's not really supposed to understand social values.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with all that. I mean, I don't. I feel like that's something you're bringing to the text, right? I mean, it doesn't. He never says that. I don't know if he ever...
No. Yeah, that's my interpretation. Because, again, he says that he doesn't really value human life besides his family, so he does stuff early on to people he doesn't, really know or like, but then...
What a motherfucker.
What a bastard.
Oh my god.
I mean...
Go on.
Okay. I feel like if he could just... step out of his own head for a minute and stop. I mean, he's a god, so of course, he's very narcissistic, extremely self-involved, doesn't love himself, but he's consumed with trying to love himself. He's absolutely self-focused constantly because he's always searching for that feeling or experience that will put it over the time, that will fill the void in his life. And in the last line in the show, his father says to him, "What's wrong with just being here?" That's the thing he had to learn is stop fucking looking for this great experience or this feeling, right?
Stop reviving kids who killed themselves when their family members are all dead just to try and make yourself feel better.
Family is not about that stuff. Koto had to tell him, family is about it's something you build together. It's these relationships and all these little moments that compile up over a lifetime together. Yeah. And even when it's hard and shitty and not fun, and even when you're not feeling particularly fulfilled, you still, that doesn't mean you get to just do something shitty.
Yeah. It's a collaborative process.
And, and I feel again, he was just he was a big hypocrite.
Yeah.
Because he, one of the big reasons he was so down on himself was because his father abandoned him. God, made him and said, well, have fun creating stuff. I'm out. And so he did the same thing to his kids. He put his kids through that same stuff.
Yeah.
He complained that he had no purpose. he wished his dad would have talked to him, given him information and direction, and he,
I really don't understand, why he just didn't go back. Maybe,
well, he did not want to reveal, he was being watched by the shrine, I think, and he didn't want to reveal the location of the 13th plane.
Well, then it's not like he abandoned his kids for, because he didn't like them, or for, any bad reasons.
Well, why did he leave in the first place?
Why did he not tell them?
He did tell them.
He didn't tell them. I feel like he never told them anything.
He never told them why.
It's one of the most frustrating things, right? It's ironic. So he's God, right? And why are people frustrated with God and the concept of God?
Because
he has this big plan and all this knowledge that he never directly communicates with us.
How appropriate.
Inari was the same fucking... He would be like, here, take these prayer beads. Smile. And he's like, why didn't you tell him?
Yeah.
What you wanted him to do and what you wanted him to use those for.
No, I think he knew that they were the life creation beads.
But for what reason was he giving them to?
God knew that, but Yakushimaru didn't know. Yakushimaru had no idea.
No, I think he did. I think he just,
How?
The way I saw it is okay, here's the beads. You can be responsible in my place while I'm gone. Take responsibility for, my things. And his entire thing is that he didn't want to be responsible because he didn't care. He wanted to die. So, I guess, yeah.
Well, okay, so, yes, he wanted to die. He didn't care. Would not receiving some... Well, at that point, he had been in the family for a long time, and it clearly meant something to him because his father leaving deeply affected him and caused him to become the sort of loafing, womanizing drinker that he...
I did have a good chuckle.
No. It feels like, from what he says, it feels like he's been thinking about, not necessarily not liking it, but not liking his situation.
Yeah, no, general. I think there's something to that there, too. You're right. I mean, the fact that he's human, he kind of he starts to feel stir crazy there in a way that the others don't.
Because I think in his episode, he's not in his episode, but when talking with his dad, is he says something about every time being the last time or something like that. And it's there's something somewhere about him saying something like, I've had to endure this for quite a while, and keeps happening, you keep doing this to me.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It feels like he's been frustrated with this.
His whims keep imposing on his life.
Way before his dad left.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And again, that more for my case. I think.
His father, when we initially see him when he's in the flashback, he has the appearance that his son inherits through the prayer beads. But the thing is, that to me is another crime that he commits against Yakushima, because he's now saddling him with an image that is not his own. I mean, self-identity as far as physical appearance is a big
grew up.
Well, he kind of grown up to look exactly like his dad did when he had the prayer beads.
Because he's not even his biological son,
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So
his hair color changes and all that.
Yeah, inheriting the prayer beads saddled him with that image. And I think that ties back to what Yakushima's issues about finding his own reason to live, as well as his own identity issues. Funny you mentioned the womanizing, because I did get a good chuckle when he woke up and Kyosu's causing mischief again, and the woman just appears out of frame come back to bed, honey, or whatever she said. And
okay, womanizer assumes that he does this a lot, but he's only has one girlfriend.
Yes, yeah. Well, he has one girl that he's emotionally invested in, and then another girl that he is physically invested in. Yes, I think...
What? No, no. That was not just physical, I think. The emotional investment was because he knew her for a very long time, with the, pink kimono girl. They knew each other for a very long time. I don't think it was romantic.
You're right. No, womanizer is a bit... That's not... I guess, yes, that's inaccurate. What I meant to convey was that I feel that the abandonment, the second abandonment that he'd experienced, right? I mean, his parents died, and then a few years later, his parents essentially died again, right? They abandoned him, they left him.
Yeah, same end result.
I feel like that had something to do with him sort of not fulfilling the responsibility. Also, he didn't know what responsibility he was meant to fulfill either.
That pushed him into not caring even more.
I think. And then, I mean, can you imagine being him, and then when your father Inari comes back, he's totally obsessed with Koto and fawning all over Koto. Like, the fact that it feels like their father didn't even come back for them. Didn't come back to live with them. He never acknowledges Yakushimaru for not never, but it takes a while. And I feel like I felt so empathetic. Like, I felt like it must be really painful for him. Yeah. Like, he must feel like a plaything. Yeah. Because Inari keeps on saving him or giving him these prayer beads or like doing all these like grand gestures for him, but like not just, you know, going up and giving him a hug and be like, "Hi, son."
No bonding, no.
He just doesn't know how to be a dad.
Yeah. I will say as well that one thing that occurred to me when I was
his
watching
love is very one-sided.
To himself, definitely.
He seems to like approach these relationships in terms of like what they do for him.
Yeah.
Right? Definitely. And like but I think but at the same time, I don't want to say like he's evil or this complete scumbag, because I feel like he really does love his family.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are his world. I just think in so many ways he's selfish, and he just needs to understand, right, that like he needs to like give more to them of his energy and time.
I don't think he is like intentionally negligent. I don't think he's intentionally doing the bad things he is. I just think he just doesn't know.
He's ignorant in a godly way, I suppose. Because the way I describe it is that the thing that kept popping in my mind was that it reminded me a lot of Greek gods. The Greek pantheon is, in all of its lore and fiction, very notorious for meddling in human affairs and generally not giving a damn when the consequences happen. Zeus was a massive womanizer, for example, and all of his.
There's a real womanizer.
There's the real womanizer.
Like half of ancient Greece was like Zeus's child.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that Zeus was doing all these things.
The Wilt Chamberlain of that day.
The Genghis Khan.
Yes.
But he was essentially meddling in other people's affairs and not ultimately caring about the consequences. And that, to me, Inari fits the same kind of bill, in that he's not evil. He's just not conscious of the people who are smaller than him, that he basically can't comprehend the consequences.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, look, that abuse and bad parenting is a cycle, and it's hard for people in that cycle to see it. You know, people who are abandoned, they probably hard for them to kind of tell what they're doing and put it in perspective. I get that. And like I mean, I don't think he's a complete and utter irredeemable character. I mean, clearly he makes the right decision at the end and decides to learn from his daughter. But man, I felt like you were supposed to like him especially in the beginning, and I just didn't like him.
I liked him, even after he does creepy things with the kid. So like I liked him, and then he shows up, and it looks like he doesn't care about anything. About his family or whatever. He's just there to do business, and I'm like, is he gonna turn evil? Is this gonna be like a twist where he's like, this was my plan all along?
Just click with me. You want to know what the thing is that ties back to everything we've said throughout this entire podcast? He was ultimately obsessed with the mechanics and not the heart, because he was trying to change.
Wow. Oh damn.
Yeah, he was trying to change worlds, but not caring about the people who loved him and he's supposed to love very immediately in front of him. Essentially, like with the show itself, the mechanics are not the important part, it's the heart, and that's what he did not realise until the end.
You won.
I think didn't he? Well, I think actually, didn't he give up on the mechanics? That's why he sort of escaped into the painting, though. But I mean, even from the beginning, he said, "You know what? I didn't really like my job as observer because it conflicted with my sort of need to create, and the world just got too big to order. So I just was like, F it, you know, I'll leave my brother to manage the day to day, and I'll just escape into this painting where all I have to do is like lounge around with my wife and kids."
I feel like he had to return to mechanics after he had to leave and couldn't go back.
Yeah, because we do see
like,
when
I
he's...
feel like that's what pushed him.
We do see when he's with Koto that he is still a part of Shrine at that point. He hasn't abandoned it entirely. It was for the time while he was raising the other three that he was not caring about. So he went away, focused back on the mechanics, and then came back to caring about the people and the heart at the very end. That's the way I see it.
We should probably get to correspondence in a moment, but anyone with final thoughts on Kyousougiga?
It's great. Watch it.
What Vog said. Give it a go. At least give it time to develop itself and reveal itself to you. It is a show that has layers to it in the sense that it takes time to unwrap and fully comprehend what's going on, but it is very rewarding to do so. So definitely give it a try. Not to mention that just being very pragmatic and mechanical about it, it's a short show. It's about, 2-3 hours and change for the whole thing?
Yeah.
Time well spent, I would argue. So definitely give it a go.
I would say for people interested in, again, what we talked about at the very top of this, that new talent coming through the industry, it's really a cool thing to see. I think people interested in storytelling, this is a very unconventional method of storytelling that the show is doing with its non-chronological mode of communicating the story. People that enjoy series about family and enjoy heartwarming things, they should give it a try. It is definitely well worth your time, and it's really pretty.
It is very pretty.
It is, yes.
I will throw out one final thing as a way of recommending this show to people. If you have watched Spirited Away, and you like Spirited Away, you will like this. Because it has a very similar overarching plot.
Episode 0 basically felt like Spirited Away, where it's like Koto running around, and then there's these like agents dressed in white, and then there's all these different sorts of things happening, and it just reminds me of like the opening of Spirited Away, where like Chihiro is running around all of these magical beings.
Yeah, well that's it.
But I don't think it retains that kind of feeling.
No, but I think that there is an overlap enough in terms of the initial setup and what the show is ultimately going for and how it feels, that I reckon if you like that, you will like this.
It's like, here, viewer, let me plunk you down in this crazy kind of magical world, and you sort of gradually explore and figure out what's going on through the characters. I see where I hadn't thought about that, but that's an interesting kind of comparison. But yeah, that's Kyousougiga. We really liked it. Check it out. We're going to take a short break and be back with some correspondence.
Narutaki's Detective Journal, Entry 108. It was a dark and stormy night. I took shelter at my favorite bean joint from the oppressive rain that blanketed Steam City like a straitjacket. It was a dive that smelled like a brewery, but it was home. Just as I tried to warm my frame with some piping hot liquid courage, he walked in the door. He was a knockout blonde with legs up to his neck. Just my type. But I could tell from the look in his gorgeous blue eyes that romance would have to wait. He had a case. It seemed that mecha anime was disappearing from the schedules left and right, and I might just be the only Seamus that could stop it from fading away forever.
The Speakeasy Podcast with Hisui and Narutaki, the internet's best and only alcohol-themed anime podcast. Sit down and let us pour you a drink once a month as we explore the deeper mysteries of anime and manga. We always have a seat free for you at ReverseThieves.com.
In a world where vivid flashbacks can strike without warning, is not that podcast. www.SSAAPodcast.com. The Ass Backwards Anime Podcast. Oh wait, I was supposed to use that voice in the beginning. Let's go again.
Love and peace da! Love
悪いでしょう。コレスポンダンス。
Welcome back to Warui Deshou. We're here. Everyone dies again.
Oh no!
Oh, again?
But before we wrap up, I thought we would take a look at some correspondence we've gotten from listeners. So there are a couple of Kyousougiga related questions, so we can tackle those first. Monocle Grizzly asks on Twitter, what's your opinion of the visual design of the show? Were you a fan of the storybook design of the Mirror City?
For me, I think that I like the design of the city and certainly how the relatively normal people and normal architecture of the buildings blended together with the craziest stuff like the floating orbs, the lino, target practice kind of figures. That's what they look like to me.
Yes.
But beyond the thing I mentioned earlier about the mobiles, and even then I might be stretching in their intent, as much as the art style was fantastic, and I especially loved how the characters were drawn. I mean, Koso, for example, was big, beady, innocent eyes, that sort of thing. I don't think that there was much deeper meaning to it. That's not a bad thing, mind you. I just think that it looked really nice, but I can really only say that about it. And certainly, it gave it a unique look and a unique feel, but picking actual meaning out of it, not so much, I would say. But that's just me. Maybe I missed something.
No, I think I agree completely.
Yeah, I thought my own reading of it was, here's a thing that's meant to convey the nature of this world, right? That it's crazy, magical, and kind of goofy, and doesn't function the way that the real world functions, and in that I thought it was pretty successful.
That it does convey very well.
Absolutely.
And that was it for me, and it was really pleasant to look at, right? I mean, the color palette was extremely nice. I thought.
Yeah, very bright colors everywhere, like vibrant rather.
Yeah.
Any environment that produces this.
I liked the character designs themselves, like the way they're drawn. These faces, I love them.
Yeah.
I love this art style.
I'm glad Grizzly asked this because we did not talk about this at all in their discussion. The visual design and those elements. Such a big part of an anime, right, is the design work. I like the character design too. I love Koto's design a whole bunch. I thought it was an interesting visual choice. That I feel like they kept making Inari smaller every chunk of the story. That he, like, every so often I look at him and think, you've gotten shorter, mate.
Old Monk and like Fox Inari, a different height.
Yeah. Well, I feel like even Fox Inari, I feel like I remember him being taller than Koto, and perhaps that was just because flashback.
No. I remember him being, well, he was taller than Koto at all points. I remember his height.
Not all
being
points. At the end of the show, they were the same height.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
They stood face to face, and they were the same height. It was weird.
She grew up. She was standing up.
Maybe it was a visual metaphor for the stature of their father lowering as they matured.
Yeah.
I made a joke, but sure, maybe it works that way.
I like to imagine.
That's a thing in family life, right?
Yeah,
like you realize, like, hey, my parents fuck up too.
Yeah.
They're not perfect.
The balance of power shifts.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I like to imagine if you are.
You might you might not notice it, but your brain did. Like when a character like has to look up to someone, it does imply some sort of a relationship.
Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
I like to imagine, Doc, that if you are indeed correct, that he was literally getting smaller. That if the season had gone on for maybe 60 episodes more, you would need a magnifying glass to see him at the end. Where's my dad?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the series, and measure him pixel by pixel. You know, like the taller look theory from Star Wars. There's an alternate version of Mark Hamill in the movies that's like 2 centimeters taller.
I have never heard of this before.
I mean, neither.
Go look it up. The Taller Look or something.
Oh, man.
Luke.
I will have a look.
Navy Cherub asks, there's one thing I never hear discussed, the OST, the soundtrack. Any thoughts at all?
I'm going to have to be quite frank here and say that while I did like the opening and closing themes, particularly how the closing theme was used as a way to close out the episode, which is kind of obvious, of course, but like how it segues from that into the credits, rather than just being its own separate thing, usually to help punctuate the ending moments of the episode. The OST, while nice, did not particularly stick out to me in a mean way. Like I didn't again take much meaning from it. Maybe again this could be me, and perhaps I was too heavily drawn into what the characters were saying and what was happening on screen to miss that. I don't know. Like it wasn't a Cowboy Bebop falling out of a church window moment, to say the least. But that's just me. Your mileage may vary.
Actually, beyond a couple tracks, I didn't notice it all that much. I thought it
was really forgettable to me. Like the opening was beautiful.
It was great.
Yeah,
Love the
opening was great.
Love the closing as well.
Closing was good as well.
And I don't know if
it's not Taller Luke, it's Bigger Luke.
Bigger Luke.
Yes, Bigger Luke.
Bigger Luke. I don't know if it was a separate track, but I felt like it always led into the closing, the sort of guitar-laden track that they played whenever Koto showed up for the first time and whenever some kind of dramatic things were happening. I feel like they almost always played it before the end. That track was really good. But beyond that, I don't remember it too much. There are people, I forget what his Twitter handle actually is, but I always call him Pecco. He goes by Pecco. If Pecco is listening, he'll be super mad because he's a big fan of the soundtrack. But it didn't, I don't think, make as big an impression on us as it did you.
Yeah, like, and maybe that's because of the content itself. Like, I'm sure.
Yeah.
If, I don't know, I haven't looked for the OST on its own. Maybe I will. But, like, I'm sure it's nice on its own. But during the actual show, I think it was more in the background.
Yeah. For me, it did not stand out, but again, I must stress that is not necessarily to imply it is bad. I just think that it could be a number of reasons. Maybe I was just too invested in hearing what was going on to take true notice of it. I feel like, I don't know, I've got to hold my hands up here. I mean, like, I feel bad for not having much to say on it, but at the same time, ultimately, I do not.
I was paying more attention to other things.
Yeah, same there.
Some more general questions. Patrick Stokel, who emailed us, Warui Deshou, WARUIDESHOU @gmail.com. He took the time to email in and asked, or says, I have a quick question for the podcast crew. What anime from the 80s or earlier would you recommend? So old stuff.
Oh, dear.
Ken.
Oh, dear.
Yes.
Watch Hokuto no Ken. Hokuto no Ken is stupid, but it's lovably stupid.
The best stupid.
It's the best kind of stupid. So just stick around with it for like 80 episodes. It's like 2 weeks of watching. It's nothing, right? So like stay around for like 80 episodes and kind of laugh at what it does. Don't take it seriously, and then it's gonna start getting good.
Yeah, exactly. It gets really good at the end.
It's like Kenshiro kind of just everyone just kind of grows on you, even though they're like even though everything is stupid, and then like when they've grown on you in such like a silly way, everything gets good, and it's amazing.
Shadon, got any oldies?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Basically, I don't know. If they are from the 80s, I'm not any that I've seen that immediately stand out. I can't immediately remember them. I think my anime experience basically is from the 90s onwards, as far as I can recall. Well, I guess I've got some homework to do then in that case. Nothing immediately springs to mind that wasn't it. And I know later I'm going to look at my anime list, my own personal one, that I use to keep track of what I've seen. I'm going to find something that was from the 80s, and I'm going to hit myself really hard.
That happens all the time. But like,
me hitting myself? I should really stop doing that.
Well,
another anime from the 80s I love is X-Files.
Of course.
Watch Bob the Builder. It's great. Bob the Builder is my favorite.
Bob the Builder was not even from the 80s.
Oh my god.
I don't care.
Patrick, I don't know if these will be new to you. In fact, I don't think that they are. But I love the original Super Dimensional Fortress Macross. That's from '82. That is fantastic. Love story / mecha show / pop idol show. It's really good. Zeta Gundam from '85. Well, of course, you need to have seen the first Mobile Suit Gundam movies. Don't watch that original TV show. They made 3 compilation movies that are much easier to digest and cut out all the silly bullshit. Watch those and then watch Zeta if you liked those. Zeta is awesome. I don't care what the haters have to say these days. Fuck them. Zeta Gundam's great. Gonna throw something, I guess, a curveball now. I'm looking at my anime list. So there's a 1979 television show directed by a director who I love dearly, Osamu Dezaki, who has directed such wonderful things as Golgo 13, The Professional, and among others. But he made a TV show called Aim for the Ace.
I have heard of this.
It is all about high school ladies playing tennis.
Right, I'm going to point out now that I have seen clips of this show that you're referring to. I will say this, right, and this is going to be me retroactively fitting my answer in backwards. Watch this show that Doc is referring to just for the art style.
Oh, yeah?
The art style.
Did you like it that much?
From what I saw, the art style, just the pastel colours.
It's cool.
It looks fantastic. So just for the art style alone, just to get something a little bit different, definitely watch that. Right, I plug my answer in backwards. I'm good now.
I mean, it's kind of a prototypical sports show. Like the sports shows of today are doing the same things that Aim for the Ace is doing, except along with that, like sort of ganbare, like try harder, get better, like train your ass off, like sort of thing, and commitment and team and all that good stuff that's going on. Aim for the Ace also has the super melodramatic high school girl drama in it that Dezaki brought to such works as Brother Dear Brother, which is sort of the culmination of that stuff. That's a show from the 90s. We should fucking watch that show for this podcast. That show is fucking nuts and awesome.
I'm totally down for that.
But there's that dimension to Aim for the Ace too, Patrick. I recommend that as a good old show to sit down with. Email us again, waterydeshow@gmail.com. Twitter, we have at Warui Deshou, and all of our personal accounts. I'm at The Subtle Doctor.
I'm at Shaden1010, that's 1010.
I'm Vergelia on everything.
And that's where you can find us. Thanks, everyone, for listening to Vergelia. Thank you for joining us.
Oh.
Shadan, thank you for joining us.
It's been my pleasure.
We'll talk to you guys later. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email waruideshou@gmail.com. That's WARUIDESHOU@gmail.com. We might read and respond to your email on the show. The show does have a Twitter account, but it's mainly used to announce new episodes, so you're better off using our personal Twitters or ask.fms to reach us. If you found the show on iTunes and you could leave us a rating and review, we will be most appreciative. Or like, subscribe, and or follow us on whichever service we're on that's meeting your listening needs. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you join us again next time.
またね。